Well, just tell me and I'll put it on. I'll just switch to make sure that's
Really quick?
projecting.
Okay.
I thought the regular season was already over. So you're not in the finals, you're like in the consolation final or something? Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we're not going to beat it. I think so. I think that's my okay. But you can play. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Bye. I know.
So everyone, it would be great if you could stay for the comment. If one person can speak, and then you can. But that's going to happen right after public comment, so it's really just my 5 minutes.
Mics are all on.
I don't think it's on.
Yes, on.
Buenas noches. Buenas noches. Gracias. So before we start the board, before we start our board meeting, we're going to announce closed session. There is tonight, and we start the meeting we started today at 5:45, 5:50 actually. And let me find my closed session notes. So we called the open meeting at 5:50, and no?
No, we did.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was gonna say sorry.
Before I report out from closed session from today, I have a report from the board's closed session meeting on Sunday at April 7th, 2019. On this date, the board met and selected candidates to interview and finalize conditions for the superintendent's interviews. Now I'll report from closed session from tonight. On item 3.1.1 on the vice principal for Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School, there was a motion by Director Alper and a second by Director Khadijah Brown, and was all in favor. Director Appel was absent. And do we want to?
We're very, very pleased to announce that Mr. Gabriel Fredman has been selected as the next vice principal at Martin Luther King Middle School. He's here with his family. Mr. Fredman has been serving the district as a teacher on special assignment, working on response to intervention, has also done some district-level RTI work, formerly also a special education teacher at King Middle, and we're absolutely thrilled to have Gabe joining the administrative team. Welcome. You got Janice?
Also happy to say that on 3.12, principal of Emerson School, with a motion by Director Leva Cutler and a second by Director Julie Sinai, was all in favor, with Director Appel absent. And we have our new principal of Emerson.
Hi there. I'd like to introduce, it's with great pleasure that we announce the appointment of our new principal of Emerson School, Jana Holmes. Stand up, please. Ms. Holmes is an experienced principal coming from a successful tenure at Fremont Unified School District. She served Fremont Unified as a counselor, assistant principal, and principal. Ms. Holmes, a graduate from UC Davis. She was the 2016 Fremont Unified School District Administrator of the Year. We know she will be very successful here in Berkeley, and we are looking forward to a great school year. Welcome.
Just want to say welcome our new principals and their families who also have joined us tonight. Thank you. So we also heard on 3.2 an update on our bargaining unit, on our units. Berkeley, we just had an update on the Berkeley, BCC, and BFT, and UBA. And on item 3.3, we heard an update from legal counsel, and 3.4, board had a discussion regarding the superintendent search. Okay, so now, thank you for your patience. And now, we need to approve the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's?
We need to make just a couple changes.
Okay.
Item 12.6 is on the consent calendar. That will be really quick, and we have someone here from that, so I'm going to propose that we move that to be the first action item that we do very quickly.
Okay.
After the consent calendar. So that's 12.6. And then I think we wanted to switch the order of items 16 and 17.
Okay.
So we'll have the
13.
public hearing for Realm before the approval of the notice of intent to revoke the charter.
Okay.
And I'll move the agenda with those changes.
So motion by Director Alper, second?
Second.
Second by Director Brown. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And so now we will go to move the agenda, report snapshot of our schools. And oh, you want to do the roll call?
Buenas noches y bienvenidos. Si hay miembros del público que desean dirigirse a la mesa directiva durante el periodo de comentario público y necesitan traducción de español al inglés, favor de hacérmelo saber, ya que se le otorgará tiempo adicional. Muchas gracias. Director Arvin Hariri. Director Julie Sinai. President Judy Appel is excused tonight. Director Khadijah Brown.
Present.
Director Ty Alper,
Present.
Vice President Beatriz Leiva Cutler.
Presente. Yep, so tonight.
Okay, so in keeping with what we've been doing all year to anchor our meetings in what's happening at our schools, we're very pleased for our school snapshot tonight to have our principal at Cragmont, Ms. Michelle Sinclair, who will introduce her staff to give us a brief snapshot of stuff that's happening at Cragmont.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you. Beautiful. I'm going to start out by introducing who's here today. I have Julia Hart, who's our special ed and mild mod. We have Elijah Gardia, who is a 3rd grade student at Cragmont. Claire Dugan, who's a 4th grade teacher at Cragmont, and Maria McCord, who's teaching kindergarten right now. We're going to start out, well, first I think I'll just talk about a few programs we have, and then we have a video we want to show you that will pretty much summarize the highlights of Cragmont Elementary School. First, I just want to talk a little bit about some of our extra activities that we have besides our regular curriculum, things that I used to always come present about as a PD coordinator. So now we get to talk about the fun things. 4th and 5th grade do a living history programs. They go to the Petaluma Adobe overnights, and they go on a ship, the Balcutha, and we wanted you to know these kind of exciting things about Cragmont. We also do the Mosaic trip, where kids get to learn about, it's a social justice camp, and they really learn about how to treat each other and with respect. And then we also do an activity called Books and Bagels, where we invite parents in the mornings, and we have bagels and coffee, and parents come in and read with kinders and 1st graders. We have a very elaborate earthquake preparedness program, and I want to give a lot of accolades to Claire Dugan, who runs our program, and we're going to do a big drill next week where we're inviting people to come, and it's going to be the fire department's going to come and everything. We have cross-level reading buddies. We have an LGBTQ student group. We have dance K through 5. We have art K through 5. We put on a showcase, and we also do a grandparents' day where we invite grandparents to come in and spend a day with us visiting, and lots of other things. So now I'm going to turn over to our video, which will show some of the other exciting things at Cragmont. I don't know. Uh-oh. It's going. Internet. Oh. Internet. Oh, no. Sorry.
You want to put it on the thumb drive and press and
Are you on?
start it in the middle.
Well, I'd have to. Yeah, I also have it on a thumb drive.
Where is your Let me pop that in.
Check what? Let me just try right now. I just don't want my email to go up. What's it called? It'll usually go on your devices, no name. Okay, we got it on a thumb drive, so I'm gonna scoot it, yeah. Okay, let me get it. But I don't have volume. I don't have volume. No, because it's going. Oh, no, I don't have it on. It's not even playing on my laptop.
Why is there no volume?
Yeah, it's in email. That's what I'm doing it. Oh, shoot. Now I don't even have it. Yeah, I just can't get email. I mean, internet. Are you getting it? Playing?
Oh, now you have volume. You're connected, so play out.
little bit more, folks.
Assemblies. Dance and assembly. PE. Because it's outside activities and it's fun. Rejoice because you get to do a lot of fun stuff. Reading because I learn new stuff. I like to dance because I'm a good dancer. Library because you get to check out books. I like PE because it is fun and you get to do fun sports. Library because you get to pick out new books every time.
Miss Claire because she's nice and she takes care of us.
Coding! Yeah, coding! I like coding because it's fun and you can create your own games.
I like coding because you could build what you want to and you can make your own game.
I like how nice the teachers are and how patient and calm they are with the kids. And I like how it's safe and there's no bullying or fighting or violence. I like how it's like a tight-knit community. And I like because it's really safe and you can just be free.
We just like everything here. And the playground. It's just really a fun environment.
Science. Because yesterday I just learned something new about the water cycle. Art. Dance. Friends and teachers.
Art and dance.
What's up? High five. It's not raining. Can I go outside? What's up? High five. My name's Zaire, but I am that guy. What's up? High five. My mom's so fly. What's up? High five. Reading math, but wait, I need my supplies.
You like Best Bad Fragments?
Yeah!
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay. Thank you, Craigmore. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now we'll begin the meeting with, first I'd like to thank, hold on, keep losing my place here. To welcome the public to be engaged and coming out to be informed about Berkeley schools and coming to our agenda and also coming to speak to us in public comment. I'd like to provide a brief overview of tonight's meeting. We'll address several major topics on tonight's agenda, as some of you are out to speak to us about. First, on item 13, the board will be taking action and making decisions on ongoing and one-time budget proposals for 2019-20 from our base grant. These are recommendations from the superintendent and staff. Some of these expenses are coming from other budgets that we would like to exhaust and are expenses that we would like to help our students create efficiencies and reduce other costs to the district. Item 16 on the agenda is the approval of notice of intent to revoke Realms Charter. It's an action item of a notice of intent, and it's to be discussed at that time. It's an open session, and it's the first of a three-step process. And for discussion, item 14 on the agenda, it's a workforce housing action. Director Julie Sinai, along with staff from BUSD and BHOMA, have begun the process of planning for the pre-development of this. And I look forward to the update, and she will be directing that conversation. And then we have on item 15, initial discussion about the possible middle school rezoning. The board will have a preliminary discussion on possible middle school rezoning due in part to the need to reassess our school assignments for middle schools. Director Alper will lead this discussion. And then item 17, as you heard, we'll be moving up to a public hearing, and that's a time certain that we'll hold to at 9:30. So we might stop and then go to that, or, no, it'll be first. It'll be first. It won't be before neither, yeah. So now comes public comment, and we have the cards organized, and we'll be rotating. Tonight, we'll have 2 minutes because we have several people who want to speak to the board. Do remember, please, that when your name is spoken, please come up, stand by the side so that we can rotate people to discuss and say your point. Also remember, by ceding your time, you forgo your opportunity to speak at tonight's board meeting on that issue. No one can later cede their time to you to speak on that issue. In addition, it's important that the board practice to first hear from our students, and hopefully we can put those students forward. Speakers tonight are limited to 2 minutes. No person may speak for longer than the 2 minutes. At the discretion of my discretion tonight, extra time will be given to those who need translation or have other speech needs. When there's 1 minute left, the light of the lectern will turn yellow. When your time has elapsed, please you're allowed to finish your sentence and your thought, but please do not try to speak beyond that because it takes the time from the other speaker. I understand that there are really important issues about which many people feel very passionate about. However, in terms of to be fair to all speakers, it's our goal to be respectful to everyone, and we ask that you do the same for us. Which means please do not use swear words or language as profane, as sometimes in the audience we have children and youth, and we ask for everyone to practice in public a respectful way of getting your message across. We'll hear as many speakers as we can in those 30 minutes, and we'll hold to only 30 minutes. For each green card pull, I will call the name of the speaker, and please state for the public the agenda item on which you're speaking, as well as share your name. To keep things moving, please stand in line next to the person or on the side of the wall. And thank you. We look forward to hearing from you. We're going to hear from Amanda Porric and then Laura Babbitt.
Okay. My name is Amanda Porric, and I teach 10th and 12th grade social studies at Berkeley High School. This is my second year teaching and at Berkeley High. I want to be a teacher more than anything, and specifically, I want to be a teacher at Berkeley High. I set my sights on BUSD from across the country as I began the long, test-ridden, and expensive path to becoming a teacher. Berkeley High had the national reputation of attracting the best educators committed to equity at the center of their practice. Educators I now have the honor of calling colleagues. I love that my classroom at BUSD includes students of all cognitive, physical, and emotional differences in one space. I love that my students represent nations, races, and ethnicities from around the world. The highlight of my fall was working with seniors on a long-term research project, students often asking to stay late to become experts in their field. Our classroom became a newsroom, a hub of investigative journalism, frequently working around the clock. I wonder how long I'll be able to maintain this job I love and want to continue loving so much. I'm tired. I'm tired from the magical moments editing a special education student's book that she plans to publish. I'm tired like so many teachers, leaving late only to come home and grade or email families. On the Mondays after I've worked a second job, I'm extra tired. I'm young and I'm tired. We all go above and beyond in ways that are not recognized or included in our contracts. Without our district's acknowledgement of our profound commitment as educators, I suppose I'll look at schools with higher compensation or less overstretched staff to see if I can find systems that seem more supportive than what's available here. But I fear on occasion I'll leave teaching. Just the thought writing this makes me cry and nervous to share in a public forum. Our nation, and state more specifically, is facing a crisis of teacher sustainability. And if Berkeley, the district I so admired from afar, is going to weather the crisis with our own staff, the district needs to keep supporting our phenomenal, world-class educators in Berkeley, whatever that takes.
Yeah, man.
Laura Babbitt, followed by Mark Galbraith.
Good evening. My name is Laura Babbitt, and I'm here today on behalf of the Longfellow Advocacy Group. And I'd like to just acknowledge what our last teacher said about regarding her love for her classroom because of its diversity. Before you, there's a proposal regarding rezoning, because we don't find that diversity at our middle school population. And so we do, as an advocacy group, want to support you all in voting to explore the rezoning, redistricting, specifically for our middle schools. And we also want you to remember that there was a time in which Longfellow was a diverse school, because the last part of its name is arts and technology. And so we believe that this conversation should also include restoring it to its former arts and technology magnet, which drew people to Longfellow as a choice school. So even as you go about rezoning or redistricting, you will have people who will see the facilities that King's offers as a taxpayer. You will see the facilities that Willard's offers as a taxpayer. And so the conversation must include giving families more of a choice to be at Longfellow, which we believe, in relation to our CTE program, which we admire at Berkeley High School, which the makerspace at Longfellow is creating, perfect segue. We believe that studying robotics, all of these jobs of the 21st century can help to make Longfellow that school of choice that it once was. And since I have 25 seconds, my niece was a Longfellow graduate, and she is now accepting her choice between Harvard and Stanford for her master's in education. When she was there, it was an arts and magnet school. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have Mark Galbraith, followed by John Bell Pareo.
Good evening, I'm Mark Galbraith. I'd like to cede my time to Jameer Thomas, a junior at Berkeley High.
Good evening. I'm Jameer Thomas, a junior basketball player at Berkeley High. I was fortunate enough to land a starting spot on the varsity basketball team as a freshman. My dad has coached me since 5 years old. I have a great appreciation for Coach Fields and the Berkeley High coaching staff. I am aware of the preparation it takes for a successful season, from open gyms, the hours of being in the gym, the road games, the home games, making sure that we have the right equipment on a limited budget. Coach Fields has given so much of his time to not only coach us, but to help us as young men. He reached out to my mom freshman year. He was concerned I wasn't eating enough before games. I had money, but I was a young man, not understanding the time between after school and playing games. I would appreciate if you, the school board, would approve this measure to increase the coaching stipends for the coaches at Berkeley High.
John Bell, followed by Dwayne Bidlas.
So is it too early to speak on agenda item 14?
No, you.
Okay. All right. So my name's John Bell Pareo, and I'm a field representative for Carpenters Union, Northern California. We represent roughly 38,000 carpenters, many who reside right here in Alameda County and in Berkeley as well. I'm here to speak on item 14, the workforce housing. I just want to say that the Carpenters Union fully supports BUSD and the city of Berkeley creating workforce housing for some of the teachers that, are here in the room tonight and staff as well. We support all housing. I mean, there's a huge need for housing in Alameda County, and everybody focuses on affordable housing or market rate, but sometimes the missing middle, as we refer to it, is the biggest hit, right? People like carpenters and like teachers who are blue collar workers, and there's nothing there for us. We make pretty good money as carpenters, and we can barely afford to live here. So I know that these teachers are hurting for housing. So again, I just wanted to say that we fully support it. But there's a bigger opportunity here, and I wanted to address that as well. I mean, not only could we build housing, but we could also do it in a way that that benefits some of the students that they were talking about that can come from the Makers program in Longfellow and then join the CTE carpentry class in Berkeley. And then hopefully when they graduate, we can create some opportunities for those students to work on these projects. You know, we bring them right into the union when they graduate. They come into our apprenticeship, we train them up, but we need, you know, we need help from Berkeley, the city, and BUSD through the PLAs that we have and through the community workforce agreements that we have to implement those. So I would ask that when you guys send out for RFPs, and again, we're going to support you through this whole process, that you include the use of the PLA or the city community workforce agreement on the project. And so thank you, board, and Dr. Evans for letting me speak.
Dwayne Binloss, followed by Mark Joseph Ranma.
Dwayne Binloss. On this occasion, Dwayne Binloss, Berkeley High School counselor for AMPS and Berkeley International High School, advisor for National Society of Black Engineers Junior Chapter and Hispanic Engineering Society, and instructor at Berkeley City College. I concede my time to Abbi Passkey.
Hi, my name's Abbi Passkey, and this is my first year as a BFT member, but my 17th in public education. I'm also the parent of 2 students who attend Berkeley Public Schools and one who will begin attending in 2 years. I am the science teacher at Washington Elementary. Before this, I coached math and science teachers in Oakland, Hayward, and San Francisco. I love teaching science because I know that a quality education can be a transformative experience. I love to tap into students' natural curiosity and slowly illuminate their understanding of the world. As a district, we are at a crossroads. Do we create the conditions that make it favorable to teach here in Berkeley? Do we invest in teachers and make them better? Or do we let our best and brightest leave for other districts with higher pay, where they don't need to have a second job to make ends meet, where there is more support for special needs students? Over the years as a parent, teacher, and a coach, I have seen that one thing is really the key to a successful classroom, and it's not super exciting. It's consistency. And consistency in expectations, rigorous academics, yes, but consistency in teaching staff is definitely part of that. When we have staff turnover, when teachers leave our district for higher paying jobs, it hurts schools, and most importantly, it hurts students. Even now, the vacancies at my own child's middle school have left her with basically subs in 2 classes this whole year. We can weather 1 year with churn and turmoil, but can we as a community afford to have vacancies and turnover as our norm? Can we afford to undermine the education system we support and sabotage the schools we love, the students we teach, and the children we nurture? I ask you these questions, and I tell you that Berkeley teachers need to stay in Berkeley.
Thank you. Mark Joseph Ramya, followed by Laura Curry.
Good evening, my name is Mark Ramya. I work at Berkeley High School. I filed a new appeal because the complaint procedure wasn't followed through with again. The district recently didn't respond to my October 22nd, 2018 complaint within 60 days. The district didn't acknowledge that I filed the October 22nd, 2018 complaint of discriminatory bullying as a statutory uniform complaint under Section A at first and also with the appeal, treated it as a non-statutory uniform complaint under Section F. When I initially tried to deal with that very complaint at the site level last June, the BHS principal, my supervisor, and the special ed program manager ignored my request for a resolution. Recognizing its 60-day failure of that same complaint, the district met me thereafter and promised to have completion in 10 working days, but also failed to have it done in 10 days. So I requested an appeal. The designated administrator of my appeal claimed that BCCE's contract Appendix G was followed, but misspoke because the meeting complained about substantiated possible disciplinary action due to the topic of harassment and safety. In this year's 2 of my evaluation meetings, I had to twice request my supervisor to please follow the BCCE CBA contract evaluation procedure instead of being told by the supervisor that she thought I wouldn't want to have to follow that contract procedure. The people I've mentioned that were involved in this were Dr. Donald Evans, Jan Hamilton, Aaron Schwang, Susanna Bell, Lena Sweeney, and Brent Daniels. Does the BUSD headquarters at 2020 Boner have its 2020 vision off by some diopters? For the media and community, classifieds often lack being seen as an integral part of education. BUSD's convergent nearsightedness treats the classified employees as if they lived on some far-off island in one of our world's largest oceans. There's an island with statues deeply implanted into the earth, like the classifieds who work daily with our students, for which many administrators have little to zero daily student contact.
Thank you. Laura Curry, followed by Igor Trugeb.
Hi, my name is Laura Curry, and I'm the parent of a 7th grader who has deep tiger pride at Longfellow Middle School. We're very glad we chose Longfellow. It's a wonderful place. Last year, we came before you and we asked district leaders to engage with us on a conversation about innovative programs like restoring the 7th period day that Longfellow used to have as a way to support student learning and enrichment and attract families from across the city. And we also asked you to relook at how Berkeley rezones middle schools and to revisit that zoning assignment approach. So I urge you to fully consider both of these paths, both restoring the types of programs at Longfellow that come with being the designated district's choice school, and to look at the rezoning of the middle school assignments. Also, given that those will take some time, I want to revisit 2 other things we brought to you last year. One was to advocate for immediate resources for current Longfellow students, since the supermajority of our school students, 68%, face high headwinds. So I urge the district to maintain the commitments outlined in last June's letter from Dr. Evans and to deliver on the promises in that letter that have not yet been met. I'm excited to hear about the makerspace discussion for Longfellow, and I hope you'll demonstrate a commitment to the 2-way immersion program in the middle school years. We also ask that you prevent cuts to our site staffing allocation, which is based on a rote enrollment formula that doesn't take equity nor BUSD's academic support index in mind. This issue remains very important because a high concentration of need requires a high concentration of resources beyond LCFF supplemental dollars, but also in the district's approach to general education. So I urge you to keep a strong staffing model in place for Longfellow next year, and I'll leave you with the leaflet that we shared with you last year on this topic around general education. Thank you.
Thank you. Igor, followed by Joe Vega. It was Joe.
Good evening, members of the Berkeley Unified School District Board. Believe it or not, this is actually my first time speaking before a school board meeting, so I'm very excited, and I stand here very excited as a member of the Housing Advisory Commission, but speaking in my individual capacity, to have been one of the 3 co-sponsors of an item that unanimously passed through our Housing Commission in support of item 14, to maximize opportunities to build additional workforce housing, to prioritize keeping our community servants who give so much of their time day in and day out and on weekends, as we have heard earlier today, to be able to stay in this community and actually be able to afford to live here and raise their family. And you know, over the last 8 months when I was knocking on doors, I heard so many stories that tore at my heartstrings about educators who had to live in their parents' house, educators who had to commute upwards of 2 hours each way just for the privilege and the right to be able to be an educator or a classified worker here. So I'm very excited that this is moving forward. I think the $150,000 that is being requested by the city is a pittance compared to the funding that we campaigned for and could be available. And I know that there will be a process in place pending your vote about the ideal opportunity site or sites. Just wanted to say that I live right across from the San Pablo Adult School, as a board member Levia Cutler knows. And I would welcome having neighbors across the street from us there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joe Vega, followed by Ryder Logan.
Good evening, board. I'm Joe Vega, Berkeley High School parent and president of Berkeley Athletic Fund, here to speak on agenda item 13. I'm going to cede my time to Maggie and August Fern.
Hello. Hi, I'm Maggie Fern, and I play JV water polo and varsity lacrosse.
She's the starting center on varsity lacrosse, we should say. My name is August Byrne. I have my daughter Maggie. I have a 7th grader, and I have an 11th grade son that plays water polo and swimming. I started looking at the coaches' stipends at Berkeley High because last year we needed to hire a new water polo coach, and we kind of discovered it was hard to do when every other team in the league pays their coaches 2.5 times what we pay. So it's not like, 10%, 20%, 2.5 times. This year, Maggie's team has a position for an assistant coach, but there's nobody in their right mind who's going to coach a team, even as an assistant, and take $954 for the whole season. So, yeah, we're way out of whack. This isn't small numbers, we're way out of whack. And actually the $50,000 that's proposed doesn't get us up to median of other teams. It doesn't even get everybody up to minimum wage. It just kind of helps us in the process. Because also if you look at, water polo, lacrosse, tennis, volleyball, golf, swimming, and even our NCS championship soccer team, all of those coaches are paid half the medium rate of all the other coaches in our league. So we are just way, way, way out of whack. So I just want to stress that this proposal for $50,000 to increase stipends goes directly to 74 dedicated coaches who are spending hours a day with 1,200 Berkeley High School student athletes, shaping their lives both on the field, in the field of play, and outside, like getting Jameer to eat at the end of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ryder Logan, followed by Rob Thomas.
Hi, my name is Ryder Logan. I went to Washington Elementary, and I'm now in 7th grade at Willard. I am dyslexic, and proudly so. I'm a special education success story. Before I was assessed by the Berkeley School District, I figured out that I had a learning difference. I didn't feel as smart as other kids. I used to avoid reading, writing, and spelling as much as possible. I hated school, and I pretended to be sick so I wouldn't have to do the work. In 5th grade, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. Knowing that there was a word for what was going on was empowering and a great relief. I still don't love reading, but I will write more freely and confidently at school. I'm on the student government at Willard, and I'm in the Ambassadors Leadership Program. I run cross country. I actually like going to school. If I didn't get the support from having an IEP, and if I didn't have the special education teachers who truly took care of me, I would still have high anxiety around school. For sure, I would have pulled away from the middle school experience instead of embracing it. The special ed teachers have changed my life. I'm fortunate enough to have an amazing group of adults who care enough and work hard enough for me and with me. Laura Takal, mild and moderate specialist at Washington, saw that I was struggling and provided a pathway for me through the difficulties. Hillary Mitchell, my 5th grade teacher, wouldn't take no for an answer. She told me I was smart, and she stood by my side, and she made me feel important and supported. Joel Turner, my case manager at Willard, keeps an eye on me. He makes sure that I have time and the resources I need. I can go to him if I'm having trouble. He's my safety net. I am so lucky. But there are kids out there that aren't as lucky as I am. There are kids out there at all of our schools that are like me but are still hurting and crying during homework time, fighting with their families, feeling depressed because they can't read, write, or spell at the same level as their friends. We must support the special education teams by giving them the resources they need because they support all the kids in the Berkeley Unified. Thank you for listening.
Rob Thomas. Rob Thomas, followed by Michael Wilson.
Good evening, I'm Rob Thomas, third year math teacher at Willard. I'm Ryder's teacher. I don't have anything prepared, eloquently written down. I'm just gonna talk to you off my mind right now. My take-home paycheck every month is less than $3,000. If you Google one-bedroom apartment in Berkeley right now, the first link you can click on, apartments.com, they're gonna say $3,800, $4,000, $4,500, $2,800. As far as I know, you can't get one for under $2,000 in this city right now. So I guess maybe I should think of myself as lucky for having a 350 square foot apartment with literal mouse holes in the walls, broken appliances. If you touch the knobs on my oven, it will burn you if it's on, for about half my paycheck per month. And when I think of the unsustainability of that situation, I start thinking about Vacaville, the city I'm from. Maybe I could move back there, take my talents there, where I could get an apartment twice the size, modern, probably about $500 less per month, and my salary would only be about 8% less than it is right now. But my cost of living would probably be about 30 or 40% less. And I haven't spoken to a single new teacher that doesn't think about the exact same thing. And when us new teachers make that decision to go somewhere with a better cost of living to salary ratio, our students and this district are the ones who lose, because you guys are making an investment in me right now. You're paying for me to go through beginner teachers training, BITSA. You're paying for me to have all this training because I'm new. And the students are paying, if you want to think of it that way, going through the growing pains with me and other new teachers as we get better at our jobs. That's all an investment that the city and these schools are putting into us. And then after 5 years, I get my loan forgiveness, and me and a bunch of other teachers, we start thinking about moving out. And then all that investment that you guys put in, some other district gets to capitalize on that, and then you start over with some new teachers, and it's just a cycle that you guys paid for, and our students pay for, and this town pays for, and I'd rather stay here if I could, but it's just the reality of things. So.
Michael Wilson, followed by Janine Waddell.
Good evening, directors. My name is Michael Wilson. I'm speaking on item 13. I should begin by telling you I think that 34 years ago I was addressing the school board for the very first time as a freshman and somewhat mediocre swimmer at Berkeley High School, speaking on an issue that I thought at the time was a no-brainer, getting PE credit for all the hours that my teammates and I were spending in sports. The board agreed with us that night, and I should say that the experience must have had some impression on me, because about 3 years later, I was sitting in your seat, Mr. Hariri. I'm here tonight as the parent of a freshman swimmer. He's at home doing homework, hopefully, but I am again here on what I hope is a no-brainer. Of course you should be spending money to reverse decades of neglect of the valuable coaches at Berkeley High School. I was shocked to learn that my son is being coached by the same coach I had. He's there really on a volunteer basis. He's been trying to retire for years, but no one else will take the job for more than a year or two, and then they're gone. I was also shocked to learn that what he's getting paid is the same thing I was paid when I was 25 years old and coached for a year at another local high school in Berkeley. In fact, one of our mottos in this district, there are 4 E's I know, one is excellent. There's a proposal and an analysis that says just getting to the median would be about 70 to 100K. I have a very small ask. Challenge yourselves. Don't shoot for less than the median. That's what the proposal is. Shoot for a little bit of excellence. Let's get to the median and maybe even a little ahead. It's a small ask tonight. Let's get there. Let's do it. Let's do what's necessary and right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Evans and board members. My name is Janine Waddell, and I am a 3rd grade teacher at Washington Elementary, a community that I have been a part of for almost 8 years. This is where I began my teaching career as a student teacher, and it's where I want to stay. I love Berkeley. I love how the angst of the Berkeley Bowl parking lot is almost immediately dissolved when I run into students and families inside. From the new kindergarten parent looking over and finally asking, "You teach at Washington, right?" to the now middle schooler who hugs me from behind in the checkout line and yells boo. Going on a walk in my neighborhood and waving to people I know from school feels good. I'm 30 years old, and I was fortunate to find a one-bedroom apartment a few years ago after commuting from San Francisco for years. I'm lucky. I live a half a mile from school. This life change has enabled me to spend more time in the classroom after the kids leave, planning more intricate lessons that trigger critical thinking. It has allowed me to attend evening events without the worry of sitting in traffic. I feel well-rested, prepared, and energized for school each day. What worries me the most is that as I get older and want a family of my own, it may not be possible for me to afford to stay in this wonderful community. I want my future kids to have the opportunities that Berkeley schools provide. I want my future child to embrace diversity, be surrounded by an authentic sense of empathy among all ages. I want my future child to march in a school pride parade and learn about composting in the school garden. I hope that I can stay in Berkeley. I hope that my future children can benefit from the talented and unique teaching staff that we have. I love my job. I'm good at my job. But as the years go on, I'm reminded of the dilemma that I'm faced with. Stay at the school I love, with the community I love, or pursue personal dreams of having my own family and kids. You have the ability to help me and many others make a long career in Berkeley. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have two additional speakers. We're going to, at the public hearing, it's JJ Lewis and Tricia Blum, that you can also speak at that time. Would you like to hold to the public hearing? Yes? Okay. So we, as a board, truly appreciate the time that the community has taken time to speak to the board during this public comment. The board does not respond directly to the comments made during this public comment period. Please do not take that as an indication of our interest level or level of compassion. For what you are saying, I'm sure you that we take all comments seriously and oftentimes wish that we could respond directly to all your comments, but then we'd be here indefinitely. Board members can, if they choose, respond to the public comments during their board comment time, which is coming shortly, which is scheduled to occur after the committee comments. Our superintendent and staff also take note and oftentimes will follow up with the speakers. Board members also, you notice, have computers and oftentimes during the public comment are typing or taking notes. We take seriously the community has made the time to come out to the board meeting and instead of being with their family and at home. As much as possible, board members refrain from using our computers when the public speaks and instead focus our attention on the speakers and your words, and have taken the time to come to talk to the board to convey your message. So that concludes board comments. Now we'll hear from our unions, the Berkeley Council of Classified Employees.
Good evening. My name is Mark Rameh from Berkeley High School. I'm giving this speech on behalf of BCCE Union President Lynette Robinson. I've asked Mark Rameh to deliver this message in hopes of you actually listening to understand. In this district, there are too many inconsistencies that impact our students. We adults have a tendency to teach how not to follow the rules. We are the example of discrimination. How, you ask? We choose who is worthy of opportunity. We teach children that their lives are based on a dollar amount and ask them to give more while receiving less. Mismanagement of funds and positions are a focal point for BCCE. We have seen the takeaways increase as there is an addition to the amount of traumatized and failing students. We see the creation of positions that don't cover the necessary duties of the eliminated positions. We see improper planning that increases the workload of the BCCE member, but no compensation is attached. We see funding for necessary supports being reduced, yet the tools for positive and productive outcomes are not in place. We see the school board arbitrary approval for a cut or creation without any independent investigation as to how the student population as a whole will be impacted. We continually hear about the processes in place are flawed or just don't work, yet the board leaves it that way until a lawsuit is filed. The district needs to deal with things as they arise. The complaint process is the best example for students, parents, community members, and staff have stood at the podium and complained about their inconsistent and negative experience. Lastly, it needs to be understood that there is no group that will not feel the impact of your decisions. The haves affect the have-nots, which affects the haves. That is a vicious cycle which we have created and are supporting. The view from the inside is a retrofitting of the prison pipeline. In closing, I need for you to understand that the Berkeley Council of Classified Employees is structurally necessary, and the viability of this school district is heavily weighed on our backs. We should not have to fight you to properly support all students, but be working together to make it happen. I hope you listen before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, from BFT, the Berkeley Federation of Teachers.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Evans. Thank you for your eyes and your ears tonight. I'm speaking on item 14. I'm speaking on behalf of our, I'm a part of BFT. I'm speaking today because I could not meet the 2-minute limit, and they graciously allowed me this time. I know many of you are looking at me and wondering who allowed the high school student to speak to you tonight. It is a frequent joke among my students. I have been locked out of buildings by fellow staff and told to get a tardy pass. I am very young. I've been teaching in SFUSD and now BUSD for 3 years now. My name is Vivi Mage, and I currently teach medical honors English at Berkeley High School, as well as advise the Berkeley High yearbook staff. Mr. Hariri, I just saw your face on a page today. Hello, it's good to meet you. I love my job. I have been an advocate for interdisciplinary education since my undergraduate years. I love using English to explore difficult, controversial, and exciting topics that are relevant to my children. My class is the class where students explore racism and cancer research in The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, government effectiveness and poverty and social programs in Our America and The Language of Flowers. It's a humbling job. Now, I want you to understand I'm not like many of my colleagues here tonight in that I do not have a family and I do not want a family. I chose this on purpose. It's what I want. I live here in Berkeley with my partner, and our rent is half of our monthly income, combined income. And that number just increased a few months ago. Right now, we can get by, but my partner and I have student loan debt. We pay the lowest amount of possible, and the interest increases to loom over us. We thrift our clothes, we cook and eat in to save money. I walk to work, and it's getting harder. I will repeat, I do not want a family. My students are my family. My colleagues are my family. And I want it that way, but my family is being torn apart. My colleagues are strained. They're pulled apart while trying to stretch themselves thin enough to hold their families, their students, the development of their craft, their hobbies, their joys. Some are being stretched so thin that they're almost becoming transparent, and you can't even recognize them anymore. I am not yet at this point. I have somewhere between 30 to 50 years of teaching in me. But in order for that to happen, you need to keep me. You need to keep those like me. Learning how to become an effective teacher, as it's already been described, is learned on the ground. It takes years to develop, and even then, most of the veteran teachers that I've worked with have told me that they didn't meet their full potential until a couple years after that, and I'm not even there yet. When you have high teacher turnover, I have no veteran teacher mentors, no one to look up to, no one to support me when I'm struggling. With high teacher turnover, students are struggling to absorb content because they're also having to develop relationships with new teachers every year, some people every semester. Learning to be an effective teacher is also a time and a money investment on the part of the school and the district. I can personally attest to the amount of money and time that leaders and admin have spent on me to grow as an educator at Berkeley High over the years, and it is not cheap. But they do it because they hope to keep me long term. They do it because they are hoping that there's going to be a return on that investment, that I have years in me to give. They have a right to be concerned that they are wasting their money if they can't convince me to stay. If a tech company will pay me 6 figures to do this exact same job, but for adults in San Francisco. The only way that you are going to be able to keep me, to be able to keep teachers like me, so that we can keep our family together, is if you compensate us for the priceless work that we do for this community. Your work to this community is to support our work, and I am asking you to use that power. So please use it, and thank you.
We have Local 21, our UBA, Berkeley administrators. Thank you very much. Thank you, teachers, for coming out. So now we'll hear from our committees.
Well, Matt, the MC, had just dismissed everyone. Well, that's the effect I have on people. So I'm here to speak about the middle school rezoning, but first I want to say that I support all the speeches of the teachers. We at the PTA, we brought the tea back to PTA, and we support them to be compensated in the way that is right. And this is what I want to talk about today. So Laura talked about Longfellow and middle schools. I'm going to talk more broadly about it. There's a dramatic imbalance in the sociological makeup of Berkeley middle schools, and that's deeply troubling. It defies our professed values and threatens our educational mission. The trend of de facto resegregation among middle schools is not new, but it has accelerated in the last years due to mutually reinforcing factors that are too long and too complex to discuss here. But enrollment data, as you know, clearly demonstrates that we're failing also at providing the socioeconomic balance and equitable distribution of resources that is necessary to meet the educational needs of each and every child. This is not a single school issue, but a district-wide issue. It is impossible to overlook, and it is unacceptable. There is way much more to say about all this. But I will look forward against my citizenship. I will look forward and simply affirm that we are glad that the district and the board are taking on this issue. Fostering a sociologically balanced student body, including, as it was mentioned, the multiple dimensions of the academic support index in terms of tailwinds and headwinds, is key to creating the educational environment that both reflects the values of our Berkeley community and provides the conditions for everyone to thrive together. Looking into rezoning is the first step in that direction. So, we, the PTA, support the proposal to create a process to review and address the sociological imbalance among middle school, while understanding as well that no course of action has been predetermined. In this regard, we would like to see a process that has a strategic vision, that takes into account the system as a whole, not only middle schools, but also elementary school, which prepare children on equal standing for middle schools. A strategic vision that takes into account and takes both long-term and short-term measures, which must be mutually reinforcing to ensure the educational, again, well-being and enrichment of each and every student in every cohort. In other words, just rezoning and hoping the pieces will fall into place will not do. As you very well know, we need a sustained commitment, sustained leadership, sustained resources. We would like to see a process that involves open, transparent discussion and engagement, because this concerns all of us. Not only because the kind of public education we foster reflects our values about the kind of society we want for our kids, something that I've already talked about, but also because in a more practical sense, the potential changes will have a very tangible daily impact on parents and teachers, and of course, kids at the three levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And when I say all of this, I promise I appreciate how complex it is, but it is also too important, and we owe it to our community. To conclude, we, the people of the PTA Council, support you, the board, and the district in exploring options. And so that segregation and related issues of opportunity and sociology cease to be an issue, yes, we encourage you and expect you to do the right thing for the right reasons and in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other committee members? District committees? Thank you. Okay, so now we will go to board superintendent board comments. Board members?
I'll go first. My comments are really short tonight. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, as always, for coming out, especially to the fellow educators that were here tonight, and especially to the students who made comments tonight. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom, and also for speaking on behalf of your teachers and also on behalf of your coaches. I would like to extend a huge congratulations to Vice Principal Friedman and also Principal Holmes. We are so lucky to have persons of your stature in our community. We're incredibly lucky to have you all join our family. My office hours will continue on Wednesday, April 24th at 8 a.m. at Zazie Foods.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, and I too want to thank Craigmont for coming and doing a wonderful presentation, and to all the teachers, again, who came out and shared their stories. I know they're very heartfelt and are really key to the work that we've got going on right now. And I too want to thank all the students who showed up to speak on behalf of your teachers and your coaches. I know it's hard to come out at night, and I appreciate the words. I wanted to just touch a little bit. A couple of weeks ago, Vice President Leyva Cutler and I met with the city, Mayor Adeguin, and city staff to talk about the issues of our homeless families. And one of the things that Mayor Adeguin did, which was, I think, very important for the district, was really brought together the leadership of the city departments that are responsible for homeless services and made a real commitment to better coordinate across the school district and the city to serve our families and our children. It's really difficult in Berkeley, where the majority of our homeless folks are individuals who have been chronically homeless. And because our children and families don't meet the HUD guidelines for chronic homelessness, we often don't have access to the same level of services. So the city is going to be hearing on April 23rd their 1,000-person plan, which is the plan staff are coming forward with to meet the needs of, at the time, it was 1,000 homeless persons in the city of Berkeley. And I don't know if people saw the Berkeley side article recently, but there's now a projection that actually over the course of the 12 months of a year, there are up to 2,000 homeless persons on the streets of Berkeley. And so I encourage folks to go to the City Council meeting on April 23rd and to speak on behalf of our homeless families. We will be coming with Student Services Manager James Wogan, and staff are working on a formal letter to present to the city so that it can be used in the Measure P deliberations. Those of us who are Berkeley residents who voted for the funding to go to more homeless services, we need to make sure that a portion of those funds are going to homeless families. So Vice President Leyva Cutler and I will continue to work on this issue, but I wanted to make sure people knew that the mayor and city staff are very eager and willing to work with us. And the last thing I wanted to say is that my office hours are suspended for the month of April because they land on Sundays, and between the superintendent search and Easter, there's no Sundays. So they will resume on the second Sunday of May at 3:30 at 1951 Coffee Company on Channing Way below Telegraph.
I have two comments. One, I'd like to congratulate and welcome Andrea Morales Mendoza for her membership and my appointment to the Youth Commission. She's effective April 4th. And I hope to also attend a Youth Commission soon to thank some of our student appointees for their position and for representing Berkeley students and our city of Berkeley. We've had some really lovely responses to the Cesar Chavez Dolores Huerta commemorative project and classroom project. We've had plays, we've had some really nice artwork that we hope soon to present and announce our winners. So thank you very much. We hope to we're going to repeat this classroom project again for next year, so we'll get it out to the school district on an earlier calendar. That way everybody knows about it much more. So thank you. Superintendent? So we'll move on to our consent calendar. With the movement of 12.6, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move.
Director Alper, do we have a second on the consent calendar?
I'll second.
Second by Director Sanai. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so now we are going to go to the public hearing.
No.
Oh, 12.6, yes. I'm sorry. I thought it was the other way. No, I have this one up here. Okay, so we're going to go 12.6. Do we have a motion for that, or?
Yeah, I'll move to approve.
Okay, we'll have a motion by Director Alper. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Director Brown. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so now we will move to the public hearing. No, to decision on ongoing.
Yeah, number 13.
Number 13.
So I have our Associate Superintendent Scuderi, as well as our Assistant Superintendent Follingsby. We brought to the board, and I want to thank the board for approving our $2 million worth of reductions. Each year we come to the board, usually at the end of our budget reduction process, items that either come at the last minute that we need to consider. Some of these things are things that we know we cannot live without, and we need to move them forward either as a one-time item or as an ongoing item that will continue throughout the rest of the years to come. So we have a list of items that we are bringing to the board that will be either one-time items or ongoing items, and they will be broken down, and an explanation for each one of these will follow. So I'll turn it over to, yes, is there something? Oh.
Okay.
Turn it over to you guys.
All right, so we'll get right to the new computer. BUSD budget priorities, school year 2019-2020. Okay. Is that okay?
Keep talking.
Which button are you using to advance it? Are you doing it off the screen? Okay. So as the superintendent said last time we saw you, we gave you this list of ongoing and one-time expenditures. As was stated in the introduction, there's minimal funding given the fact that we just completed a budget reduction process that resulted in a reduction beginning next year of almost $2 million in ongoing funding, in ongoing expenditures in BUSD. So Just to review what we presented when we saw you last, the proposed ongoing expenditures in the total of $123,500 include a proposed $50,000 increase across the board for athletic coaches stipends, a proposal to add sanitary products to all of our schools, emergency supplies for schools, and the other additional ongoing expenditure was the estimated ongoing costs associated with administrative systems upgrades. The proposed one-time expenditures for school year 1920 include $85,000 for administrative systems upgrade, and it's a little difficult to see because what you see in the fourth column here is the ongoing costs associated with, for lack of a better phrase, the startup costs of those administrative systems upgrades, and that means putting systems into place, particularly with our HR processes, personnel requisitions, hiring, et cetera, to take those off of paper and into the 21st century for the purposes of efficiency and tracking. There's also a proposed one-time expenditure of $30,000 to explore some of the alternative delivery methods for special education services that were discussed in our special education audit a few years back. There is a proposal for a demographic study, another 10-year enrollment study to help us plan for the future. There is a proposed $90,000 in polling costs and measure planning for the upcoming facilities bond and other special taxes. And finally, the startup costs for the sanitary products being made available in the schools of $23,000 to $30,000. There were a few questions last time on some of these items. One was regarding the athletic stipends, and you heard during public comment that this increase or this addition doesn't get us to the median in Alameda County. Last year, the district paid approximately $131,000 in stipends to, I believe it was 76 coaches, 76 coaches, head coaches, and assistant coaches. So this $50,000 does not get us to the median, but it represents, I believe it was approximately a 30% increase if you applied that $50,000 to the salary schedule, or a stipend schedule, if you will. I believe there was a question on the sanitary products, and I don't know if someone wants to, there was a question about whether or not the initial startup costs could be lower. Is that correct? I'm trying to remember. There's a question about that. John Calise, our facilities director, executive director of facilities, is here if there is a question. Huh?
No, it was just a clarifying question
Okay.
in terms of going with the mainstream products or going with biodegradable products, which is part of our sustainability plan. So
Right.
that was just the two things that we had talked about.
Yeah, so that would be an increase in the annual costs if you wanted to go with the organic product. That's what we have.
Right. So how I would like to suggest that we approach this is that we first just go down these items, and if you had a question or a comment, that we'll come back to it. But right now, we'll just go yes, no. So, or thumbs up if you have a question about the increased stipends for athletic coaches, a comment. If you had a question, concern, or comment. Okay, thumbs up. There's thumbs up. I do have a comment. I'm supportive, first of all, so I'm supportive, but I would like to suggest a plan for how we can move up eventually this and not just leave it for today and approve it, but also how can we grow the stipends over time so that there would be some kind of plan of how we can do that. That would be my only comment. If board members are in agreement? Okay. So it stays at the 50,000, but with staff coming back to the board eventually with a plan of how that can grow. We can increase that. In terms of the sanitary products, any comments, questions on both the ongoing and the one-time? Yeah, we're all for it. We're fine with that. On the emergency supplies, we're all for it. Okay. on the estimated ongoing costs associated with administrative systems upgrade. We're all for it. We're all for efficiencies. Okay, so now in regards to the, well, it's the same thing. It's that we supported the upgrades for the one-time only for $85,000. And then the next one is exploration of augmentation special ed delivery model for $30,000. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns? No, we can move forward with that. Demographic and enrollment study, a 10-year plan. We're fine. On the polling costs. We're fine? Okay. On the sanitary products, Josh would be happy. No, he wouldn't. On the sanitary products, at one time, we already discussed that. We said yes to that. On ongoing expenditures, that's it, right?
Okay.
Yes.
The only caveat is that, to all of them, is that,
I knew this was gonna sound
well,
easy.
no, if we can do them for less, we obviously will. Because that's the thing, it's like, yeah, I'd like to see if we could do some of these things for left. I'd like to see if we wouldn't have to spend $90,000 on polling, maybe it'd be a little bit less. So knowing that we're very cognizant of the cuts we just made, keeping an eye on the ball here, and if we can do it efficiently for less, that would be fantastic.
Staff have what they need. They have our vote on this, so we're fine.
Motion?
Thank you.
Oh, no, we have to take action.
Oh, this is an action item. So we'll,
We can move it all
so we'll move it all together because you have our vote on these items. Yes, you have it?
together. Someone has to make a,
So who would like to make the motion?
I'll move.
Okay.
You move.
Director Harvin and
I'll
Student
second.
Director, and second by Director Sinai. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will go to the workforce housing. And Director Sinai?
So I think our facilities director, John Calise, and David Mayer from BHOME will be joining us at the table. So I'll just start while the slides are coming up. It's been an honor to be able to represent the board in these discussions with BHOME, in the community, and with the city. There is a lot of enthusiasm for tackling this issue of workforce housing for our educators, and people are extremely interested in coming to the table. As you all, now that the slides are up, as you all remember, on February 6th, you designated myself and the superintendent or his designee, and Superintendent Evans has designated John Calise, our facilities director, as his representative. And we were, along with David Mayer and representatives from BHOME, were able to meet with Mayor Adeguin quite a few weeks ago, where we talked about the letter that we had put forward, which I think was in last meeting's packet, where we asked for $150,000 in planning and pre-development for workforce housing, helping us to identify a site. Narrow down our sites, which we'll talk a little bit more in the evening, later this evening. And we also wanted to look at what were the capacity questions, how many units would we be able to build, what are some of the challenges that we would be able to face. And because our staff are not housing developers, nor do we have a lot of staff in our facilities department that can be contributing to this effort, we were asking for $150,000 so that we could bring on a consultant to assist this district in developing proposals for housing. The mayor at the time recommended that the letter be passed to the Housing Advisory Commission, because it's the Housing Advisory Commission that advises the mayor and council on what to do with the various funds that are for housing development in the city. You heard from Commissioner Igor Tregu today at public comment, and on August 4th, we made a presentation before the Housing Advisory Commission asking for a recommendation of the $150,000, which the HAC, otherwise known as, approved unanimously. So they are going to be sending a letter to the mayor and council, putting on record their action. They had a very dynamic conversation at the HAC, and one of the things that they identified was the desire for us to identify whatever property actually allowed for the greatest amount of density. Because of the demands of workforce housing, not only in the educator space, but in general, they're very cognizant of the needs for being able to develop as many units as possible. But also they requested that we consider things like the diversity of the units, of being able to accommodate families as well as single adults. And knowing that the HAC is advisory to the city council, not to us, it was good because these are the folks who deal with housing issues every single day in the city. So it was good to get some feedback. But unanimously, they supported increasing the AMI up to 120% so that we could have diversity in our rental mix. And the mayor is looking at bringing the item forward on April 30th. So we will go back on April 30th to make a presentation to the city council, where the city council will approve the $150,000, hopefully, approve the $150,000 ask. And this is a copy of the letter with our specific ask that we made to the HAC and to the city.
Can I ask you a really quick question?
You sure can.
If the council approves that in April, does that money is available immediately after that?
So, I don't know. It would be considered a formal commitment that the money would come through. I don't know when the cash would actually, like when the check would be written, but I think from our perspective, it would be approved. And I think Director Calise is going to talk about an RFP process later on in the meeting. And one of the ideas is we could go ahead and let the RFP out, not award it until the funding is actually confirmed.
Or if we knew that it was coming, we could borrow from ourselves, knowing that.
Exactly. It's kind of like a grant award. We get a grant award letter, we can start the program even though we don't get the check. That's what the April 30th decision will be. I would encourage us, it's a public meeting, so I think as many of us who want to go can go and be in the audience so that we can be clear. I think what the city also needed to hear is that they were very enthusiastic that the board has taken a position to pursue this. So it's not just an issue that, we're out there in the community talking about the importance of workforce housing, but because the board took action, designated folks to have the conversation, made a clear ask, will present a clear plan on how we want to move forward. They see that the school board and our teachers and our staff are very interested in seeing this happen. There was great public comment at the HAC from a representative from BFT talking about the needs of teachers. So that's kind of where we're at. I think I will now pass it over to David Mayer and then John Calise, who are going to talk about the work that's happening with Be Home and in the district.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Evans and board members for inviting us back. And I feel like Julie just gave a great summary of a lot of the activities that we have all shared in getting accomplished in the last 2 months. Be Home as a community-based organization, one of our key roles is to reach out to stakeholders and to our public officials to keep them informed and press this priority of educator housing. Over the past months, we've enjoyed our counsel and support of Director Sinai and Facilities Director John Calise in helping us as Be Home frame the message in a way that best supports BUSD. Since the last board meeting, Be Home has had meetings and communicated with the mayor's office, both together with BUSD and our own, as well as championed these issues with different city council members, HAC members, as well as reaching out to our state representatives. We have provided as much support to BUSD staff as they've needed, and we look forward to continuing in that role as appropriate. During the last few, sure.
I'll take a moment before we go into more content. I really want to thank Be Home for all the work that you guys have been doing, because they've been doing a lot of background research and advocacy and communication, and it's been just instrumental, and so thank you.
Welcome. I actually want to thank some of the Be Home folks who are out here and many who may be watching, including Josh, and as well let you know that we're adding members to Be Home, bringing in certain skills and experience that will help us champion this. One of the things that was a learning through this process was, and I brought back to you that slide about balancing the funding with the money needed for workforce housing and the funds available. Through our process of both meeting with the mayor and also talking to representatives, we've identified that there are other sources of funding, including city funds, such as the housing trust funds and developer fees, which in our meeting with the mayor, he indicated that those could be applied to educator housing. That's important because one of the things that came out of the discussion was that Measure O funds are going to be initiated in 3 different tranches at a little bit lower levels than we had initially anticipated, and those lower levels aren't due to need, they're due to the city's ability to bond. So that was important for us to hear, both as an indication of the mayor's support for this initiative, as well as for us to understand that there are other sources within the city. As well, as I said, we've been researching and found other sources that the state may be able to put into play as a way of filling that one gap in our funding model. So I just wanted to keep you informed on funding, because that's always been one of the sticking points with this board of how we're going to get this done. Another thing that we've been continuing to work on is our research on educator workforce housing as it relates to housing security. We heard tonight, once again, the insecure environment that is created here as educators try to work within our district but can't afford to live here. One of the things we continue to try to find are what are clear communication tools that we can put out to the public that helps to illustrate this very issue. The slide I have before you is one example where we were able to take AMI indices, including 120% all the way through 80%, and you can see that we don't even have 60% and below, because at 80% AMI, an average household income is still commuting 2 hours. 2 hours each direction, and this is why we have so many educators who are exhausted coming to work every day. So with 120% AMI, they can't find housing in the area, but it's sparse. So we're looking forward to just trying to create more information to help communicate as we go out to the public and talk about these things. So that's all I wanted to share tonight. The bulk of the presentation really is John Calise, who's I'll let him take it away from here.
So, good evening. Thank you, David. First, I will echo what Director Sinai said, and I'll thank you, because we don't have people who are familiar with necessarily building housing developments on staff. And a lot of this work we could not have done, definitely, without the work and the research that Be Home has done, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Right now, we're looking to do project pre-planning, and there's some deliverables that you have on the screen in front of you, which really talks about the stages through the pre-planning process that we would have to look at. First and foremost is really the evaluation of possibly 2 sites and narrowing that down to 1. As you'll see when we move further into the presentation, we currently have 4 opportunity sites, but really I think it's important that we look at no more than 2 and try to narrow that down to 1, obviously, during pre-planning. We need to do a better or whoever does the pre-planning, rather, needs to do a better evaluation of the housing capacity. So we had an initial housing capacity done, and we presented that back in February, I believe. We've sort of refined that a little bit more, and from that, we have an estimation of what we can yield at each site, but obviously that needs to be further vetted and really processed through to see what we can get. Estimating costs for construction and timeline is a big one. Providing conceptual financing model based on proposed development. So as David alluded to, there obviously is a little bit of a balancing act that has to be done, and we have to figure out how we're going to finance that and make it work. Defining the operating and property governance is really key. Obviously, we're in the business of education, not necessarily in the business of being landlords. So property governance and how we're actually going to operate that and maintain it is a big one, and that's something that a consultant who's familiar with this type of work would be able to do for us. Defining the community process, that's really important. Obviously, we're proposing to build this on school land, so there has to be a community process for that reason, as well as many others. And then preparing the RFP for the actual property development. Tonight, along with this presentation, you have an RFP that Be Home and myself and Director Sinai have worked on, and that's really just for the pre-development phase. But the actual RFP for the development itself is something that we would need to vet out, definitely more than I think our own capacity can do. Next slide. So what I wanted to talk to you tonight about was really we have 4 opportunity sites that have been identified previously. Those opportunity sites are the field here at West Campus on University, the maintenance facility, which encompasses both 1720 Oregon Street as well as 1707 Russell Street, Berkeley Adult School, 1701 San Pablo, and it's very important to note that when we mention that site, we're not talking about raising the school. We're not talking about leveling it. What we are talking about is the possibility of building in or above the parking lot at the adult school, but still maintaining it as a school. And then lastly, staff parking over at Berkeley High School at 2309 Milvia Street. So the next few slides, basically, it's obviously not all encompassing of what the opportunities and the constraints are for each site, but it really talks about some of the really large ones that are glaring and in front of us. West Campus, the opportunities there, it's a central location, it's on University Avenue. It has a really high yield of 81 units, and there's the possibility to even create some type of a joint use play area, some yard space, something that could be shared between the workforce housing and the campus. The constraints with that is it does limit the use as a possible campus. We can still use it as a campus, but we are shrinking that field significantly, and that field is designed specifically to support PE. Parking issue between workforce housing, West Campus, and district office, that would be another challenge that we would have to work through. Not to say that it's not possible, but it is a constraint to consider. And then there is some zoning challenges. When you build along University, there is some different zoning that requires stepped setback. It's a split zone that we would be in as far as how many units we can yield. So we would have to try to get one type of zoning approved as opposed to both so that we can maximize the yield of the units. Maintenance facility over on Russell and Oregon Street, also known as Plant Ops. Opportunities, it's already a residential neighborhood. We have a strong need to rebuild this site as it is. The existing site was built in 1915. It is not seismically retrofitted. It's a dangerous site, and it's a large lot. The constraint of that is, number one, obviously, we need to find a place to move Plant Ops to. It's a conversation that we've been engaged in, but as we all know, property is sparse in Berkeley. You know, it has the lowest yield amongst all of the sites. There's an estimate of 50 to 60 units over there, and the primary reason for that is because of zoning. While the opportunity of it being a residential neighborhood is also a constraint. Bless you. With it being a residential neighborhood, we don't know how well it will be received to put up a workforce housing establishment. Zoning challenges and limits, that plays to the yield. We are limited to only going 3 stories over there because of the zoning. So 35 feet, it's not going to get us a lot. From a constructability standpoint, there's actually an underground creek that runs through that property, which poses a myriad of challenges in itself. And then there are historic constraints on those existing buildings. So as I said, those buildings were all built in 1915. So again, not something that we can't do, but definitely a challenge. The Berkeley Adult School parking lot opportunities, the lot size and the shape allows for extremely effective use of the space. It has a really high yield. If we look at this as a combination of studio apartments all the way through 3-bedroom apartments, which is how we looked at each of the sites, we have an estimated yield of 108 units at that site. We can do a 5-story building with potential for parking below, and excellent location and access to public transportation. Constraints for that, we do have a potential loss of up to 70 parking spaces for the adult school. And small section of that footprint is in what's deemed an R2 zone, a residential zone. So it will require some zoning variance from the city to build the entire project within that CW zone, which will allow us to maximize the yield. Lastly, the Milvia Street, the staff parking lot. opportunities there. Lot size and shape, again, it allows for an extremely effective use of the space. High yield, not quite as high as San Pablo, but estimated of 90 units. We can go up to a 5-story building there, and it's a downtown location. Constraints, first and foremost, it's the potential loss of 135 staff parking spaces for the high school. Use of this site will eliminate the future possibility of increased parking, tennis courts. I know these are conversations that have been had, so I want to remind the board of that. But I think ultimately the primary constraint here is the loss of that staff parking. So staff recommendation, I think first and foremost we need to, or the board should consider removing Berkeley High as a possible site. This site is it's vital to the current operations of the high school for staff members to have a place to park. And I also believe that we should remove the maintenance facility as a possible site at this time. And the reason I say that is the existing site constraints between finding a place to move plant ops, actually moving plant ops, because we'll deal with a rather long process of entitlement and permits through the cities, and then as well as the construction and the low yield, I don't know that the maintenance facility is the best possible site to consider right now. So I would suggest removing those 2 sites and really looking at University Avenue and San Pablo. Additionally, I would ask that, as I said in this package, we did include the draft RFP, and I would ask that we're authorized to release that RFP for workforce housing. And I apologize, I just caught a typo where it says development, and it should say pre-development. So I just want to note that. But as Director Sinai indicated, even though we don't necessarily have a commitment of the funds at this time, we can still release that RFP. Get it out there on the street, as we like to say, and hopefully see some responses with that. So with that, I'll turn it back to Director Sinai.
Thank you so much. I want to just remind the board, one of the reasons why we're bringing this forward tonight, also to help try to identify and narrow the sites, is if we want to apply for Measure O, if we deem it appropriate, if it's ready, and the RFP for those dollars come out in the fall, we need to be ready to be able to respond to that RFP, which is why there's a little bit of the urgency to get our RFP for pre-planning out as soon as possible, so that as soon as the dollars are approved, we can get a consultant on board. And then if you could, Director Calise, go back to, or David, go back to slide 8. These things that are listed here are what we need the consultant to do. It's a lot of work, and so we really need to try to get somebody on board as soon as it's possible. This is what we laid out to the Housing Advisory Committee of what we would use the $150 for, because the city needs to know it's not just giving us a check for $150, but this is what we'll get, and by the end of the summer, we'll be ready to apply if it's deemed appropriate for Measure O. So what I'd like to do for the conversation, one is to see if there's any clarifying questions of John and David or myself, and then to see what people's feedback is around the site narrowing, and if there's kind of a sense of the group right now of a logical 2 or maybe even 1, because the reality is that the narrower we get, the more concentrated we can be with the consultant. So first, let's see if there's any questions of John or David or myself. Beatrice.
I had a clarifying question in terms of the consultant hired would be work under Berkeley Unified. Berkeley Unified would be directing the work of the consultant.
John would be directing the work of the consultant.
It wouldn't be from the city. It would
No.
just be, they would be working with us. Okay. And just throwing it out there, the city has a corporation yard. Is there any possibility of sharing a corporation yard?
Their yard's pretty small.
It's pretty
yeah,
small?
I don't
Yeah.
think they have the space.
For what you need.
Creating that kind of a partnership obviously is a challenge in itself, but I don't believe they have the necessary space to support that over there. They're really
When we're looking for
But maybe
efficiencies in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue about relocating the corporation yard is really needs to move forward in a dialogue with staff which is kind of irrelevant to whether or not it becomes a site for housing at some point in time. The urgency of the facility is one that I know the superintendent and Director Calise have been talking about.
Okay, those are my.
Any other questions?
Yeah. So for the parking option or using the staff parking at Berkeley High, do you know if the parking lot is currently at capacity? Like, do all the staff use? Like I see some nods in the audience.
Unfortunately, much of the staff at Berkeley High is forced to go outside every 2 hours to relocate their car.
Yeah.
We are well beyond capacity of that parking lot. We're fitting 135 spaces in there, and that is not actually, if we actually design those spaces to the proper size, it would be significantly less, unfortunately.
Okay, that's good to know.
Thank you. I did have a question about parking. So with the adult school site, I think the slide said we'd lose 70 parking spaces. How many are there now?
You know what? I'm not sure. I would estimate off the top of my head, based on that being 70 between the parking lot and the front and the back, I'd say we probably have between 3 and 350. But I will tell you that, especially at night, those parking lots are full with the classes that they are running out of the adult school.
So the idea is that we would have parking below, but not enough to completely make up for what's there now.
Correct, and I want to be really clear when I say that as far as having parking below, it's a conceptual idea. It's something that we've talked about and considered, but again, that's definitely something that we would need a developer to really vet out to see can we still have the yield that we're looking for as far as the number of units by adding that parking. What does that do to the cost? What are the structural constraints with doing that, and so on and so forth? Because when we talk about parking below, we are talking about surface level parking. So.
These consultants, I'm sure, are being, other school districts are looking at something similar. Have we looked at who is using this kind of work? So we're getting somebody who's already been doing this kind of work.
Yeah, well, we haven't gotten
Hopefully.
anybody yet.
I mean, but eventually.
But what we'll do is we'll look for consultants who've been involved in some of the other districts that have been working on this. And San Francisco has been working on this, San Mateo, Santa Clara. Some of them have already built, and some of them are in the process.
Right.
Yeah, well, I would.
So where BHOME has been really instrumental is actually reaching out to some of these districts and doing some research about what they, like in fact, the draft of the RFP was drawn from other districts that have been doing this work. So it's not like there's a tremendous amount of examples out there, but there's enough that's giving us some, enough content, and that there's the former community relations director of the San Mateo Community College District has made herself available to consult with us. She's built student housing. Again, on community college campuses is a little different than on school district, but yeah, we're trying to pull on the expertise that's out there.
And it is important to recognize, too, that by doing this as an RFQP or an RFQ or an RFP, for this, we're able to choose not only based on price, but also best value. And with that best value is the criteria of experience and what you've done and how you've been able to help with the financing and so on and so forth.
I think I've raised this before in terms of a conversation. This is, just the planning of this, hiring a consultant, building. In that process, we're going to lose teachers. And I don't know if in that planning, that proposal, some kind of short-term solution thinking can happen, because in this process, what it might be 4 or 5 years, what's going to happen with our teachers in our classified?
So I think that's really two different things. I think this RFP process and this developer is really going to focus on the housing itself. We did talk to Mayor Adeguin about the short-term needs. And also part of Measure O is rehabbing other facilities. David is talking to some of our state legislators about if there's some fixes that the state could think about in short-term housing. And so I think we need to continue to talk about that. This particular RFP would not be looking at that.
I think that kind of information is important to give out to the public in terms of we're looking at various options and other things, solutions, both for the short term and the long term.
I also wanted to say, when we do the project pre-planning deliverables, I just want to highlight this defining, operating, and property governance. Sure. What we will do is the developer, the consultant who we work with, will provide us options. This is a huge area of work that we need to be very cognizant of. This is a question about where our teachers and our classified staff are involved in the dialogue, how we look at the governance. So it's not necessarily that the consultant will come in and tell us what to do. The consultant will have to get feedback from the key stakeholders and come up with options that we will then be able to deliberate. So I just wanted to clarify that. So let's take a couple minutes. We only have 3 minutes and 40 seconds. What are some of the folks' responses around narrowing of the sites?
Can you go back to the opportunity site?
Which one?
The one with the 4
The
sites.
one that have all 4. And I want to give you one little caveat. Parking in the city is the most difficult issue on the face of the earth. And the city has been working on parking policies with all of its housing over the last few years. And I think before we get too concerned about how much parking we'll lose or we won't lose, we really, as part of the consultant work, need to understand the trends of parking with multifamily units right now, because there's been a lot of policy shifts and changes around that. So there have been some creative ways to address it. There have been some discussions about eliminating it. So I think that's one of the things we'll ask our city folks to give us really good advice on.
Because there's parking, there's parking, not to, there's parking for the new housing, and then there's existing parking for whatever the use is now, yeah. I'm really curious to know what your recommendation is, Director Sun. Well, just because you're the one who's been closest to this. I mean, not to put you on the spot, but I'm curious to know whether you think we should narrow it to the 2 that staff is recommending.
I think I am completely in agreement that for the time being, we eliminate, I call it the staff parking / tennis courts, and the Oregon Russell Street property. I think those are not ready. I'm a little bit more wishy-washy around the West Campus and San Pablo, whether I would absolutely eliminate West Campus. I think San Pablo we need to study. I think that's probably the best opportunity because it's the highest yield. It's on a major corridor, and I think we can deal with the parking issues. West Campus, I'm a little nervous about saying no to, so it might be worthwhile doing a little bit of research on it, but I think what's going to end up coming back is San Pablo Avenue is what my gut tells me, based on all the research and what's the most feasible. It's also, you can get the height there. You know, there's what we haven't talked about are density bonuses and other issues that along that corridor is potentially easier to facilitate.
I guess I feel comfortable eliminating the 2 sites that you feel comfortable eliminating. I don't feel like I know enough to eliminate this site. I guess my inclination is to accept the staff recommendation to keep those 2 in the mix.
I would agree. Yeah, definitely, I would agree. Something in my heart doesn't feel good about eliminating staff parking at Berkeley High. I just can't see it. But yeah, just to your point, Julie, I think the adult school would probably make the most sense, but would like more information about how that can actually work.
Yeah, that's right in my neighborhood, the Berkeley adult. You know, I'm still wanting to hear what we can do around the tennis courts and the staff parking also at Berkeley High. That's also something that's impending. On the West Campus, it's also, we have construction. You know, that was going to be the site that we were going to move. So, you know, I want to keep that there. Just what if it was explored just a little bit. But I'd be more favorable to the adult school. And the maintenance, it sounds like too much work and needs more thought behind it.
So maybe what we could do is, oh, Arvin, do you have any comments? You sure you don't want to stay in Berkeley and, you know, we work on some housing?
No, he's going to Harvard.
So maybe what we could do is I think this is on the agenda for action. We could entertain a motion to accept the staff recommendation with, you know, the caveat that, you know, it looks like we're leaning towards San Pablo, but we would like a little bit of exploration on university just to make sure that we've done our due diligence in focusing on sites?
I mean, if you hadn't said that, I know you are closer to this, my inclination is that this is a better site, but without really knowing anything. So you may be very well right, but I'm not sure that I would say that the adult school is the one, and that we should just look at this one. So to me, with the information that I have, I feel like they're kind of equal, and I'd love to see more.
Yeah, I think that it's worth looking into both, but that we should maybe put more of our eggs into the basket of the adult school, and then maybe do some later research. And if something pops up, then yeah, more evenly.
Well, I think what will happen is as soon as the consultant comes on, they will do their due diligence at both the sites, and then what we need is probably a calendar of decision points. And so the first decision point will be, okay, we need to narrow it to one site, because with $150,000, you're not going deep on 2 sites. So we'll narrow to one pretty quickly.
So in the RFP, that is actually one of the milestones to actually do that. And once that work is done, then we can come back and report back to the board again.
I guess I would just rather not put the thumb on the scale of either site and let the consultants come back and tell us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this one is, yeah. So I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Great. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Can I just thank you, Director Sinai? I mean, we've thanked Be Home and continue to thank them, and Mr. Calise, but your representation of us at all these committees and with the council has been so appreciated and really impressive that we've been able to move this forward in the way that we hoped that we would. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. It's a good team. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on now to the middle zone rezoning and discussion. Right now, for some reason, my internet, I keep losing it, going in and out. Yeah, so I don't have the agenda item.
Yeah, it's 9:30. Do we have to do that?
No, we're not going to. I don't know why I keep losing. It goes in and out.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so good evening. We are here to talk briefly and seek direction on the question of reassessing the middle school assignment process. With me is our admissions manager, Mr. Martinez, Francisco Martinez. Our middle school assignment process has not been updated or really deeply reviewed since 1999. So the essential question that we're bringing to the board tonight is, shall we conduct a review of steps that would be necessary, including a timeline, to consider a possible revision to our middle school assignment plan? What's brought that about? There was considerable dialogue last spring, advocacy from the Longfellow community, meetings with Longfellow staff and parents to look at the persistent ways that the percentage of students meeting the unduplicated criteria set forward by the local control accountability plan is skewed in our district, in particular at our middle schools in particular. So what you see there, if it's unclear, the reddish orange bar is the percentage of unduplicated students relative to school population at Longfellow, with King on the left in blue and Willard on the right of it in purple. And when I say unduplicated students, for those who don't know, that criteria means students who meet either the criteria of being of qualifying for free and reduced lunch, who are English language learners, or who are youth involved in the foster system. Some key considerations as we seek your direction to explore this issue further. Currently, students are assigned to King and Willard based on zones. There is a map that says you go to King in this zone, you go to Willard in that zone. Longfellow students are assigned only by request. And this arrangement is essentially based and is a result of a magnet school program model that is no longer particularly applicable or funded. There was a dramatic reduction in funding, federal funding for magnet programs that really took a downturn between 2004 and 2007. So while we still say Longfellow is a magnet school, the character of the program is a lot more vague than it perhaps once was, and there is no specific funding for the school as a magnet program. And really what we bring this question forward to tonight is because all schools, we believe, should reflect and benefit from the diversity of the district. So should the board give us direction? Preliminarily, we're seeing a timeline that looks at analysis between the months of April and May, coming back to you for a check-in before the end of the year to be sure, preliminarily developing the rezoning maps that Mr. Martinez and myself have looked at in tandem with some other folks on staff, having a community consultation process between September and October. A board decision would be necessary in November if, in fact, the rising sixth graders who are going to be assigned for the 2021 school year were going to be assigned with a new zoning and student assignment model in process. So this is completely a sketch. It's just a preliminary, to give folks a preliminary sense of what a timeline would look like if we wanted to consider rezoning and changing the process for the 2021 school year. So that is the extent of the slides we've prepared for you tonight. And again, just to go back to the essential question, is we are seeking direction as to whether or not you'd like to explore this, to explore this further.
Thank you, Associate Superintendent. And I was going to ask you to put this slide up. So just to, I guess, frame the discussion, which is on the agenda for discussion and not for action. But the question is whether a majority of the board wants to give staff this direction to conduct this review that's articulated here in the slide. So not to make any decision, obviously, but to conduct this review. And the only thing I will add, and I appreciate the concise, clear presentation, is in terms of the timing, my understanding from conversations with Mr. Martinez, and thank you for being here too tonight, is from Director Martinez, is that if we were going to, if the board decides to redo the way it does the middle school assignment, it's obviously too late for the fall 2019. If we wanted to do it for fall 2020, a decision has to be made by November of 2019 in order to give Director Martinez time to make those plans. And so if the board is going to make a decision by the end of this calendar year, yeah, thank you, November 2019, given that we would want to have, and the PTA Council spoke to this, and I think Ms. Babbitt did too, given that we would want to have a robust community process, really now would be the time to give staff this direction. If we don't, then it's pretty unlikely that we would be able to make any change in time for the fall of 2020. It could be 2 years from now, but it couldn't be 1 year from now. So I think that's my understanding of the timing and the reason why the request is coming to us at this point. So with that, I'll ask if anyone has comments and questions. Director Brown?
I have a few comments and questions. Thank you for this presentation. My first comment, I guess, is really to Ms. Babbitt and to the proud Tiger mom who spoke earlier today. To their point, how are we going to, in doing this, how can we ensure that we also have a school improvement plan that supports rezoning and makes our schools more equitable, well, not just equitable, but to the point where people want to, attractive, thank you, to make our schools more attractive? Is there a school improvement plan that can go hand in hand with this? And then I'm really concerned, and I know it's going to come up in June and August, but I'm really concerned about the rezoning maps. And I just, who would be responsible for creating these rezoning maps? How much influence would we have in the creation of these rezoning maps? My biggest fear is that I don't want our schools to recreate neighborhood segregation. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I want to make sure that these rezoning maps are done in a way that's equitable for all of our schools.
Yeah, I think those would be developed in partnership with some consultants, folks who have done some work like this with us in the past on looking at our particular, the student assignment zones that we have, and we would certainly bring you hopefully a couple of options to look at initially. So we would share developing drafts with the board along the way.
Sorry, finally, I'm going to step back in a second, but are we also going to look at neighboring districts who have had or who have done rezoning? So I know Sacramento City has, just in a way to make sure that it's done appropriately and benefits all of our schools and students.
I think that we would look at anything that is available to make sure that we are drawing an attendance zone that is equitable and that is a diverse, that reflects the diversity of Berkeley. That it would, if not to create a neighborhood school, but it would be more that it reflects socioeconomic factors, just like we do at elementary schools, and also like racial diversity at in the attendance zone. So we will look at anything that is available.
And Mr. Scuderi, I don't think you answered Director Brown's first question about the, how did you put it? The school sort of a plan to improve or
Yeah, certainly. I mean, certainly we would look at the school plan with the principal and you know, in anticipation of an enrollment change, we certainly would keep any adjustments that would be need to made there in tandem with it. So yeah, is your question about whether or not there would be kind of a change in the character of the program in general, or just maybe improving or developing the school plan kind of concurrent with leading up to this change?
Thank you. I think programmatic change to the schools to make it more attractive.
Director Brown, you're not just talking about Longfellow, you're talking about all three schools being looked at equally in a way that we're shining a light on all schools, not just.
If I can speak honestly, I am really thinking about Longfellow, and I'm thinking about Longfellow in terms of what its attractiveness versus King and also Willard. How are we making Longfellow more attractive, and how are we supporting Longfellow school and having a better school improvement plan to make it more attractive?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I think absolutely. Yeah, we could certainly do that, and again, we'd want to do that in partnership with the principal. And I think when we come back to you, there's also some discussion about, you know, if the school had a significant program change or was looking to kind of reassume that role as a magnet, what would that look like? So we can bring back to you, and I've already looked at some preliminary research on what, on how a program change functions as a diversity solution or how it doesn't. So we can certainly kind of sketch what the broader research suggests about that as a solution as well when we come back to you.
Director Stein,
This mic is going to be the death of me. Just asking in the timeline, when do you see yourself bringing that back to us?
Well, I think if we came back with preliminary rezoning maps, I don't know. Do you think we could get there by June?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we came back in June, we could also kind of bring with that concurrent some of the research and ideas on what a program change or just how a pure magnet restoration might function. It'll give us time to talk with the principal and the staff over there as well. Okay.
Director Steiner.
So I'm a proud alum parent of Longfellow, and also worked with Longfellow when it had the magnet, and it took a long time for the magnet school to get off the ground. So the other thing I want to just kind of caution us is that you create these changes, but it takes a while for them to take hold, especially if there's a content change where teachers and staff are needing to be trained. You're not going to completely, rehire a whole new group of folks. So I'm a little nervous about the timing, because I don't know how you market the new zoning without having a really clear vision of a new program and how that program is going to be implemented. So in a way, the planning's got to really be simultaneous if we think we're going to have a decision by the 19th.
Yeah,
I think just saying that we tweaked it is not going to be compelling enough. Just looking at the physical plant, take away whatever image people might have. Just doing a site visit and looking at King and Willard and Longfellow. Longfellow's got a gorgeous auditorium. It's got a beautiful cafeteria. But when you look at the physical size of the plant, comparing it to King and Willard, you've got to have something that's going to attract folks. That's why the magnet was there in the first place.
Right. So I think that, and we'll try to be clear on that when we come back, because they're in a way, those are also two goals. If you're talking about developing a magnet that is drawing kids and families to a school outside the neighborhood or outside a zone, and a rezoning process, which would actually change who attends based on where they live. So there's, I agree that if there's going to be a program change, it may take longer than a straight rezoning. But in a way, those two things do function very differently, and not wanting to open the debate up tonight. The most recent extensive research on magnets is that they're not particularly strong tools when the goal is to diversify schools within a district.
Right, so let me clarify. I'm not suggesting we do a magnet. Okay. I'm suggesting that we be able to articulate a clear, coherent program, and we're trying to work it out as we rezoned. Because what will happen is families who get selected in a sort that's random to Longfellow without clarity of what we're offering, it's going to be an uproar. So I'm just saying how we plan the program has to coincide with how we implement the new, if we decide to do a new zone. And if it means that it's a year delayed because we haven't been able to flesh out a program, or we have to be, I'm seeing heads nod back there. The program has to be coherent to be able to promote it. And then the only other thing I'm going to say around the zoning, I'm really curious with the gentrification that's happened in Berkeley, how drawing new maps is going to be done in a way to get the diversity without looking like we've completely gerrymandered the city in odd ways, because the patterns, I think we're still looking at our low income, primarily communities of colors are still in South and West Berkeley, without a doubt, but they're much smaller populations, as we all know. So I think it'll be a fine art, Mr. Martinez, working with your consultants so that we can see a balance around that. But I do support staff looking at it.
Director of the Color.
Thank you very much, Director Sinai. I think those are really good points. In my notes in this was, what's our vision for this? Which includes both, what is the vision of the current staff and parent community for Longfellow. It's one thing what we say and what we think, but also we want it to also something that our community of students and teachers and parents embrace. And also looking at the gentrification, we just approved, funding for a demographic study. Will that collide with what we're trying to rezone? I don't know. And so while I think maybe this is doable, it's really a rush, and I wonder if this is something that's longer than, a few months process. And at what point do we check in with ourselves to say, maybe this is a bigger project for us? So I would like to suggest a point in this place where we stop and pause and not rush it through, but really say to ourselves and think, is this something that we can live with? And has it been vetted sufficiently enough to be successful and over time? So I would say let's definitely something to address. I think it's important, but I also, very much part of the process in terms of how we also get the input from our community on the Longfellow identity in terms of what we have here is positive and how can we grow it.
So it sounds to me, tell me if anybody disagrees, that there's a sense of the board to give staff the direction to explore this. I guess I'll just add my own 2 cents and kind of, so I get and appreciate and don't really disagree with any of the comments that you all have made. I do think the term magnet can be a little bit confusing because it really is, as you said, Mr. Scuderi, it's really a different concept than a choice school, than a zoned school. It's either a choice school or it's a zoned school. But what I hear you, maybe everybody's saying is it's not necessarily about whether it's technically a magnet or not, but whether it's in a school that will be seen as attractive as all the other schools, and as our elementary schools are, which is a real testament to our elementary school assignment plan, which is itself a real testament to the importance of diversity and integration, which we've just celebrated the 50th year of doing in the district. So I appreciate all that, and I do and I also don't think we want to rush a major decision like rezoning. But I guess if you could just go back to the slide with the demographics, I do feel this to me is represents not in some sense a crisis. It's a sort of it's a crisis in the sense that the demographics of our middle schools are starkly in contrast to the values that we claim to profess about the values of integration. The whole reason why we are so proud of the fact that we were the first district to voluntarily integrate our elementary schools is because of the concept that separate will never be equal. And yet we have a school, even if you take Longfellow out of if you remove the orange, tiger orange line.
Well done.
Yeah. Willard and King are really pretty disparate too, and have been for a while, and that's maybe a function of the fact that we haven't redrawn that line in 20 years. So I'm not trying to be naive or dismissive of the political concerns and real genuine questions around redistricting or rezoning elementary or middle schools. But particularly then when you add Longfellow back in and you see those stark patterns where one school has students with, almost 3 times as many students who have higher needs and need more support in so many different ways than one of our other middle schools. That's not a tenable situation. We already can't fix it for next year. We can address it. We can mitigate it with funding allocations and. But that's always going to be, as Longfellow parents mentioned last year, that's always going to be fighting for scraps. So to me, doing this in the fall of 2020 is already, I think, several years too late. So if we can't do it by that time, then we can't do it by that time. But I appreciate the request that you start on it now so that we might be able to do it by fall of 2020 if it makes sense to do it. Any other? So we're not. There's not on for action, but I think that's the sense of the board that we move forward with the recommendation to explore this on that timeline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Director Sun and Director Alper for leading those discussions. And so now we will go to the public hearing for Realm Charter Schools, the request for material revision. And that's. So the hearing is open. So we have 2 speakers, Mr. J.J. Lewis and Tricia Blum. You have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes.
Start. Okay. Good evening. My name is J.J. Lewis. I'm the superintendent and CEO for Compass Charter Schools, and I'm here to support the material revision with Realm Charter Schools. We have been working in partnership with Realm, its board, its staff since December, trying to identify some of the concerns that the district has, that the community has, that surrounds Realm. We are anxious to continue that work and continue to align our two charter school systems, public charter school systems, together. I've been part of the Compass family since February 1st of 2016, and we have come a long way in our own organization's history to a point where the last 3 years, clean audits for the organization with a singular focus on putting scholars first. Of course, we call our students scholars. It's the lingo. And we want to continue to honor the commitment and the vision that Berkeley has with Realm, and ask that you, as the authorizer, allow the material revision which changes the governance structure of Realm to be part of the Compass family of schools, knowing that our intention is to continue to operate Realm as a classroom-based 612 public charter school here in Berkeley, to continue to serve the scholars they have and future scholars, to continue to employ the teachers they have in partnership with all of the partners, including BFT as the representation of the certificated employees. Again, we are here to support this revision. We ask that the board takes action sooner than currently agendized or planned, which is late May, due to a lot of the work that takes place in merging two entities together. There's a lot of considerations that come with merging, including the budget enrollment projections. There's a lot of work that needs to happen to grow enrollment to meet those projections. We are on our way to meeting those as we speak. The teachers need to understand that they have a home at Realm and part of the Compass family in the upcoming school year. Where we are right now leaves a great deal of uncertainty. Compass and its board is well aware of the concerns that the district has. We had our public board meeting this past Monday where I provided a merger progress report showing the conditions to the closing from the approved agreement and plan of merger which the district has. Our board is well aware of the current situation at Realm and is here to support Realm fiscally, educationally, and again continue this relationship with you, the authorizer, and the Berkeley community. So again, we ask that you support and approve the material revision. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Evans, board members. My name is Tricia Blum, and I have had the great honor over the last 4 months to work with both Mr. Lewis and Mr. Diaz as a business consultant in helping them bring together the merger. I have to say that I have worked with 15 other schools throughout the United States over the last 2 years on behalf of the Investor Charter School Capital. I can say that without a doubt, these two gentlemen have nothing but their students and staff and community in the best interest. And I urge the board to pull the action item for the potential material revision earlier in this year. The end of May, as Mr. Lewis mentioned, puts a great strain on the Realm organization. If the merger does go through, it is my understanding that Compass has made plans, and I think they've been shared with you, to pay off Realm's debt. The teachers will continue to teach at Realm, so they will continue to have jobs. Students will continue to be taught at Realm. The Pacific School of Religion, who is the landlord for the middle school at Realm, will benefit and potentially receive their renewal for their WASC accreditation. So there's some really great things that are coming out of the merger, but the merger can't occur unless the material revision occurs. And so I would strongly urge that when the time comes for action, that the board vote to approve the material revision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the public hearing, and so now we'll hear from our staff. Do you want to do? There's no presentation from legal counsel? No? They were not.
Good evening, Superintendent Evans, members of the board. My name is John Ye. I'm from the law firm of Burke, Williams, and Sorensen. I'm legal counsel to the board and the district. This item, we are asking the board to take action tonight on a notice of intent to revoke as to Realm.
But Mr. Ye, we're still on the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In the public hearing for the material revision discussion.
Okay, there's no other comment from staff on this. Okay, so.
And there's, did you ask if there's any other, did you already ask if there's any public comment on that?
No, there is no other public comment on this item because I already closed. Okay, so that's the public hearing for Realm Charter School is closed, and so now we'll move on to the approval of a notice of intent to revoke. Okay, earlier people were filling out cards for the public hearing, and we told the two people who spoke earlier that they could hold their comments for this public hearing. So you didn't fill out a card, but I'll reopen it. And how many people are speaking? Additional people? Okay, so we'll open it again.
Thank you very much for the flexibility of that. I wasn't familiar with the process, and so I appreciate the opportunity. My name is David Vasquez-Levy, and I serve as president at Pacific School of Religion. Some of you received, or all of you should have received my note earlier. I appreciate the acknowledgement of the letter from Mr. Alper. Earlier this week, on Wednesday, I was in a conversation with the communications staff for Governor Gavin Newsom as he prepared for a trip to El Salvador. The goal of that trip was to really reset the narrative of understanding about our relationship to what's happening around immigration. In that conversation, one of the things I highlighted was that in California, 47% of children in California have an immigrant parent. What we do around immigration will basically set the understanding of half of our children in the state of California, their perception of the meaning of government and of what it is that we are about. The children that make up Realm Middle School represent the type of children that we believe and understand, and the previous discussion was really heartened by, to see what it is that Berkeley stands for in terms of its diversity and the recognition that the diversity is disappearing from our community. Realm has created for us at Pacific School of Religion an opportunity to create the space for children of color, predominantly children of color, to be present in our community, to transform our neighborhood. That's what led us to this partnership. There is also a commitment and understanding that that requires support and integrity of the well-being of those children's educational future. The proposal for the charter, which I asked for your support of this revision of the charter to allow for the merger of the schools, will ensure that Realm is able to address the concerns that have been raised about the financial depth and capacity of the school by having a stronger financial partner. Also having the depth of skill that comes with a larger organization that can help them address the concerns that have adequately been raised. This conversation has happened a number of times when concerns have been raised about Realm, and so I think what's important is to highlight what's different now. I think it's different that they have a partner that's willing to step into, that we have had an opportunity to talk with, discuss, and understand their hope and understanding for this, and how much they appreciate and understand the complexity of what needs to be done, and their willingness to step into it to help Realm succeed. It is already succeeding in much of their work and educational work. The challenge they've had is the absence and the lack of a place that is more permanent. And that's the second area that is different. The children at Realm have a place at PSR that is longstanding. We have a 5-year contract with them and an 8-year contract for the first that is renewable. So that provides a place for the school to be able to operate. So I ask for your support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other speaker? Right, so we'll close the public hearing. And now we'll move to the approval of notice of intent to revoke Realm's charter. Do we have a? Board members, are there any discussion or questions to our staff or anything on the item on 14? On
The hearing, I mean, then we're going to do the notice of intent to revoke right after that.
Is there any questions for the hearing?
No? No questions? Okay. So we'll move to the action item now. Is there any?
Well, now we have a presentation.
Now you have a presentation?
Thank you. I'm sorry for the early premature start. I wanted to just briefly, but since it's late, place the board's action into context tonight, given the potential ramifications for Realm. So this is the first step in a 3-step process, should the board approve tonight's action. The board did approve a notice of violation in February. We received the response, and staff's recommendation is to take the first step, which is the notice of intent to revoke. And that does not imminently or automatically lead to Realm's closure. I wanted to emphasize that because this is a multi-step process in which Realm has due process. So if the board does approve the notice of intent to revoke tonight, we would return on May 9th for a public hearing in which members of the community would have the opportunity to provide input to the board. I'm sorry, May 8th. And then the board would take action on the ultimate question of whether to revoke the Realm Charter on May 29th, 2019. And it's important to emphasize as well that we had taken the somewhat unusual step of having the board, or bringing to the board, the request for material revision at the same time, because Realm's response to the notice of intent to revoke was to propose the material revision to merge with Compass as one of the remedies. And so you may recall last year when there was a prior notice of violation and Realm's response was to actually merge the 2 separate high schools and middle schools. And so we considered those 2 processes in conjunction because logically they were linked. So we're doing the same thing this time as well, because Realm's response is the proposed merger with Compass. So it is obviously a very significant decision with impacts on teachers and staff and families. So staff will provide a full analysis of Realm's proposed material revision, the budget, and give the board before the May 29th meeting both sides, the pros and cons. Essentially the question is whether to revoke the charter or instead, the board could accept a material revision and choose either to not revoke the charter, or that would moot the question of revocation as well. So that's the third step of the process. You will have the staff's full analysis of Realm's proposed material revision, and we've been evaluating all the documentation that they've been providing. Just to place the procedure into context. Should this board revoke the charter on May 29th, that is not the end of the process. Realm has the legal right to appeal that decision to the County Board of Education, and whatever party is not satisfied with the County Board's decision has a right to appeal that decision to the State Board of Education. So this is really just the first step in the process. By no means does a vote to revoke the charter on May 29th necessarily result in the immediate closure of the school, since there's an appeal process. Lastly, we've considered Realm's request to delay or defer tonight's action. Legally, I must point out that there's actually a legal deadline for the board to take the step. If it takes it, that's 60 days within the end of the remedy period. So this is why we're recommending that the board take this action tonight, because once the 60 days comes and goes, that necessarily stops the process. Also, in the larger scheme of things, a delay in the process may actually hurt Realm's ongoing operations, because should the board revoke the charter at the end of May, Realm has a better chance of taking that appeal to the county board and or the state board before the school year would start in August 2019. So those are the two reasons that staff recommends taking this action tonight. Staff has reviewed the material revision request and the budget summary and the request of the response for information, and feels that there are significant questions that still remain that warrant going forward with this process.
Thank you. So we're clear in terms of the dates, in terms of May 8th being coming to action to revoke the charter. And at that point, there would be a presentation of the material revision and budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for my purposes, in terms of I was on the board when the charter was approved, one of the things that is different in this merger is that this was not presented as an independent studies program for students, for the scholars. And I would like to make sure that that is part of the revision or discussion, because that's not what this district has approved. So it should be part of it, correct?
That's correct. And part of this process also sets forth a dialogue. There were some questions raised by Compasses and Realm's response. That was one of them. Apparently, Realm is actually instituted an independent study program this year that normally requires a request for material revision. So we want to look into that and allow Realm to respond. And also, that's what's stated in the written document. So certainly we'll have to clear that up.
That would be part of it.
And also, there's this issue of the status of the union contract, because there are some representations made in the material revision that the district had some questions on. So we will work in getting answers to those by the time the board takes this issue up.
Okay. So, board members, any other questions, comments?
I just had a couple questions, Ms. G.A. Thank you for that presentation. Am I right that the Realm's response to the revocation, the intent to revoke, is dependent on the board's approval of the material revision? Is that right? In other words, Realm hasn't proposed any other way of satisfying its financial obligations absent some kind of merger with Compass.
That's correct. That's really all we have at this point. Obviously, there's a public hearing and a later meeting. Realm might come forward with other ideas. But essentially, Realm's response to the notice of violation and the notice of intent to revoke is the proposed merger. So we normally don't treat the two processes together, but in this case we are, because substantively you're looking at the same issues.
Okay. And the material revision, which is 107 pages long, that was submitted to the district on March 11th.
That's approximately right, yes.
And our council, you and staff reviewed that material revision and submitted a series of questions to Realm a few weeks later. Is that right?
Correct, and then we received the responses yesterday. Yeah.
Just yesterday, okay. Right, the questions were received from Realm a few weeks after the submission of the material revision on March 11th. Okay, thanks.
Was that 4 days ago?
I think that we received that was what, 4 days ago?
When they got the questions.
So
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so 4 days ago, and then they responded yesterday.
Right,
Okay.
right. So Right, so there's really, my point is that we have not yet had time to evaluate the response to our questions about the material revision.
I did evaluate the responses that were provided yesterday because I wanted to evaluate the question of whether anything in the responses could support perhaps a recommendation for the board not to take this action tonight. But there were remaining questions on the finances and the union issue from the response that I think we need to explore further, and I think this process will allow us to explore those questions further.
I'm sorry, I have a big ask. Can we please make sure that we're using our comment time, or public comment time for comments, just so that we can hear both sides and hear everything, please?
Just to clarify on the 60 days, the 60-day, the clock started at the time when the notice of violation?
We received following, 60 days following REM's response to the notice of violation.
And
we
when is-
received that on February 21st. So in terms of timing it with the board meetings, the April 10th board meeting is actually 48 days.
Okay.
So it's not.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, do we have a motion, or you ready to take a motion?
I'll move to approve the notice of intent to revoke the charter.
We have a second? I'll do the second. Can we have a roll call?
Director Hariri? Abstention. Director Sinai?
Yes.
Director Brown? Director Alper?
Yes.
Vice President Leyva Cutler?
Yes. Yeah, there's three, it passes. Yeah, there was 2 abstentions. All right, we have a vote.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we go, I'm sorry, I lost mine. We go to 18, public hearing for approval of resolution to enter into energy service contract with Clear Blue Energy Corporation for lighting. You can, at the end of the board meeting, which is coming up soon. I'm sorry. Sorry.
The
We've
most
already moved.
appropriate time is during public comment. Thank you so much.
There's a public comment at the end of our board meeting, which is coming up shortly, that you can also speak. No, we're moving on. Thank you.
So, good evening. What you have in front of you tonight is the request to open a public hearing so that we can enter into an energy services contract under Government Code Section 4217. This Government Code section basically allows us to award this type of project, again, based on best value. This board has heard me talk a lot about this. And this is for Prop 39, which is the Clean Energy Jobs Initiative Act. It was the grant funding that each LEA was given up and down the state to do this type of project.
I'll move to approve the resolution.
Director Alper, second. Second by Director Brown. All in favor? Aye.
There is a public hearing attached to that. It's a requirement, so it just has to be open and closed as a formality.
We open a public hearing for the approval of this resolution. Is there anybody here to speak to the resolution for energy efficiency? No? All right, thank you.
Thank
Close
you.
it.
Is it okay that we do the vote before?
Director Brown.
Let's just quickly redo that vote after the public hearing.
Okay, we'll do the vote.
I'll move the item again.
Director Alpert.
Second.
Second by Director Brown. Aye. All in favor? Aye. All in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we close. So now we have an open session of another public testimony. This is your second opportunity. You can speak to the board. You have 3 minutes, 2 minutes. You have 3 minutes.
Again, my name is David Vasquez-Levy, serve as president of Pacific School of Religion. The process tonight has been extremely confusing. To have the revocation brought forward in an issue that matters deeply to me as a member of the community, and there's no room really for comment until after the decision's already been made, is disorienting in terms of understanding what a public hearing function is, and it's maybe just my misunderstanding of the process, even though I participate in many of them. So I just want to register as an educated leader in this community. If this is disorienting to me, I'm trying to imagine what it would be like for members of our community that depend on a school like this, who value it, how they would ever find their way to comment if I feel as threatened as I do, given that I'm the president of an institution here, and I'm shaking right now as I'm trying to talk about it. So I just want you to be aware of how that experience is felt, given the process that really sort of was brought forward, voted on. The director, executive director of the program, who's been a member of this community and participated in it for so long, was not at no point given the opportunity to speak to it, other than being warned not to speak in the middle of it until the comment comes afterwards. So I just must register at least some deep disappointment with this process. And I don't think it's intended, but it's certainly what's happening, and something that is of great consequence. I have worked on this project for Realm for 2 years with Victor and with the community there. I've been just impressed with the experience that these children are having. I get to see them every day. The reason that we brought Realm into our campus is because of one conviction primarily. There's a financial reason that will support our educational opportunity to take a building and use it for a meaningful purpose. But the biggest reason is that, to me, as I prepare leaders in this community, that's the work we do, I want them to be prepared and to do what we call theological reflection, looking at the window at what the world looks like. Because our Holy Hill, upper part of Berkeley, doesn't look that way. So if we're going to do theological reflection with any integrity, we need to do it looking at the window at what the United States actually looks like and what California actually looks like, where 75% of children are children of color, of those under 18. What I'm hoping to do is to prepare people to lead communities that will create the places, pastors and leaders, where those children will thrive. Our conversation tonight and the way it's been handled will not create a world where those children will thrive. And I just deeply, deeply grieve that. Thank you.
Good evening, Yasmin Franco. I've been a Realm family since it opened, and I'm also a Realm employee. I too am very confused at how things were done today. My understanding when I looked at your agenda online was that there would be the opportunity to look at this material revision, and that Realm would have an opportunity to present and respond as well. I don't know much about how these meetings function, but, and I'm getting emotional right now because my employment, my family situation depends on your decisions tonight. And I just wanted you guys to know that firsthand, you know, that you guys are hurting people by doing this, by telling us that you're thinking of closing this school. We're Berkeley families too. Part of why my family decided to go to Realm is because of the exact thing you guys were just talking about. Some of our middle schools are not attractive to our Berkeley families. I grew up in West Berkeley. I had, you know, the opportunity to go to King and Berkeley High, but I know for a fact that when I was in middle school, no one wanted to go to Longfellow. We were afraid to get shot outside, you know? So when Realm came around and gave my brother the opportunity to not end up at one of these schools where he was afraid to go to, it was a great thing. And I'm so confused. I don't know how, if I need to email one of you guys to understand how the process works. I just feel like we needed a chance to present to you guys what our idea of this, you know, material revision is, not just in writing, but, you know, for you guys to hear it as well. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I also like to comment, Mr. Diaz is very familiar with this process. He's very familiar with this process. We had an opportunity, we gave a second opportunity to open. He could have spoken at that time, and he didn't. He could have stayed for this period, he didn't stay. So there was an opportunity that was given. And you can write to us at the Board of Ed at berkeley.net. It's on our agenda item. So you can always speak, you can write to us. Thank you.
Hi, Tricia Blum again. So when I spoke before the presentation, I was speaking in positive terms. And I think that there is some information that's been provided to you over the last few days. But I want to be really clear so that everyone in this room understands that what we're really talking about is that if we don't approve the material revision at the time of action, tonight's the hearing, so then in 30 days or less, there would then potentially be an opportunity to vote for the material revision. We're talking about realm closing. That would be terrible for all of the reasons you've just heard. But that also means that those vendors will not get paid, right? How could they possibly be paid if the school is closed? So if we're talking about paying $1.5 million out to vendors and the school closes, then that money will never be paid. And so the school has gone out and found a solution to make sure that those vendors are paid. They have found an organization, another school that cares enough to figure out a way to pay those vendors and has said such in a plan to merge provided to the district staff on the 4th of February. So it's not that this has been some secret. The reality is you have had information through the staff for quite some time now. Not only will the vendors not be paid if the school closes, the students, as you've heard, will no longer have the school. The staff will need to find new jobs. And, you know, there's oversight fees that the school pays to BUSD, and those fees are largely from students that are not actually in Berkeley Unified School District. And so that revenue actually, while it may not be a large amount of revenue, actually does have a fiscal impact to the board. So I think tonight, the unfortunate piece of this is that the revocation, the notice of revocation and approval thereof is conflated with the material revision. And so Realm didn't have the opportunity, along with Compass, to come up and say, hey, this is really what we're proposing. It's been in writing. We've provided a lot of things. We've asked for a number of meetings with staff to introduce the Compass folks and to get everyone comfortable. It's taken Realm more than 4 years to go into this kind of debt. Surely the strides they've made in 4 months are enough to really create an opportunity for all of us to really look at what we're talking about. We are really talking about the closure of a school and a loss of a great opportunity in this community. So thank you.
Good evening. It starts right when you start talking. I was at another board meeting where they just started. So J.J. Lewis, Superintendent and CEO of Compass Charter Schools. We're interested in partnering with Realm, BFT, and Berkeley USD to continue to operate a project-based learning, classroom-based 6 through 12 charter school. We've said as much a number of times. Our interest is not to change the vision that the community had when it started and authorized Realm the first go-round. It's important to know every decision has consequences. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done to integrate these two systems together. We have been working very hard for the last several months with cross-functional teams, with our staff and the Realm staff to integrate operations and be ready for July 1st, which is when we hope to have the merger officially commence. Notification has been made to the Attorney General's office, which is a statutory requirement for 2 nonprofit organizations to merge. Doesn't mean it has to for sure happen, but every decision has consequences. And I just want to make sure that the board, I'm sure, is aware that while it's correct, the realm could appeal a decision. If you chose to take action to revoke the charter, staff will have an uncertainty about a place for the upcoming school year. It does close the school at the end of this current school year. You can appeal to county and the State Board of Education, which means that the realm could, in theory, then close, as was mentioned previously, in September. Those staff will not have a home to go to. Most likely will have already left, and there really won't be a school to have. And so the question that's before you all is, are we interested in partnering with another like-minded organization who believes in the kids, who believes in the staff, who believes in the mission of Realm? And if the answer is yes, then please work with us. We want to work with you, the elected officials, the staff, the union, the Realm community, because there are a lot of things that need to take place between now and the end of this school year to meet the budget projections, which are lofty, but they're doable if we have a fighting chance. And we're asking you, the board, to give Realm and Compass the fighting chance that we need to see this thing through. If it doesn't happen, very difficult decisions are going to have to be made. Some will probably need to start as soon as tomorrow when we report back to staff about what's going on and making recommendations that they do need to think about their own livelihoods. But we want their livelihoods to be at Realm. So please work with us and partner with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any comments?
I'd like to use my board member comment time. Director Cutler, just in the spirit of transparency, if you don't mind, just going through item number 15 and 16, explaining the process, or 16, sorry, thank you, 16 and 17, explaining the process for public comment time, just so that no one here feels like they didn't have the opportunity to speak or we didn't provide the appropriate opportunity to speak.
We exchanged the items from number 7, it was number 17 was the public hearing, so we moved that before. And we had two people who were scheduled to speak, bless you. We had two people who were scheduled to speak, and when they could have done the 3 minutes or they could have waited for the public hearing. You waited for the public hearing, thank you. And then we opened it up. And with the gavel that opens up the public hearing, is there anybody here to speak? You came up, the two people, at any point, any of the people who were here could have come up to speak. Only the two who put names down, and Victor's very familiar with this process, could have come up and spoken also. And then we closed the session, and then we went to talking to our staff in terms of what this meant also. So we're very clear on it. Then we went to the approval of the notice of action, of intent to revoke. I felt that there was sufficient time. When we closed it, then there was somebody else who wanted to speak, and so we opened it up. Again, Victor was here. Victor could have also come up and speak. He didn't. There was other times that we've had these hearings, and Victor has not been here. So there has been other opportunities when there's been nobody here from the charter school to speak. And so, I don't know what to say to you. I think that there was sufficient time. You could write to the board. Personally, we have office hours. You can come and speak to us also. We've been listening. We've been reading the materials that's been sent to us from both Realm and from our staff.
Vice President, may I add?
Yes.
Just in the sense of process, because I know these can get overwhelming and confusing. The way the board does public comment, if it's not a public hearing, the public comment is at the beginning of the meeting. So people fill out their forms, like you did, and they come at the beginning of the meeting. As the items go through, unlike the city council, where they do public comment on every single item, that's not the way the school board does public comment. The way the school board does public comment is at the beginning of the meeting, And then if there's a public hearing, it gets open again, and then at the end of the meeting. So that also is, that might be confusing, but that's why there wasn't a special public comment on item number 16, because people could have spoken to that at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, can I say something about that?
Go ahead.
Well, and I just want to reiterate, Director Leyva Cutler specifically asked if, after reopening the hearing, whether there was anybody else who wanted to speak. Mr. Diaz was here, and he chose not to.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Cutler. I just wanted to use my board member comment time to address that and to make sure that everyone is understanding of the process.
Can I ask one question, Superintendent? When, on May 8th, when there's the public hearing for the,
You could use, I think, council.
well, it's about, it.
I think we would
Pardon?
ask it about a public hearing.
It's a public hearing on May 8th?
Yes.
You would do
Okay.
one. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, good. I've heard you on the phone more in the last 2 years.
That's true, yeah.
But it's a long day, huh?
I know, yeah.
You still on the peninsula?
Yeah, yeah. How's the family?
Going.